Shabbat class on this Shabbat day here at Christ Apostolic. We welcome each and every one of you. We salute all the kings and the queens. We welcome in all of the beloved. We say hallelujah and shalom to our brothers and sisters that's in the body, in the Mashiach. We salute everyone that's here in the house right now, and those that are coming in online, those that will be joining us live, and then those who will be coming in and reviewing this broadcast. I'm gonna go ahead and say broadcast, and because I want to say something about that. But that'll be reviewing this broadcast at a later time. We welcome each and every one of you. We send out our love and the spirit of fellowship in the body of the Mashiach, and we salute all the Hebrews, Shebrews, the lions and the lioness, all of them. Welcome in, come on in, all of our brothers and sisters that has been grafted in to Yasharal. Now, one thing that you'll hear me say on today, being that this is the Shabbat, it's the Sabbath, it's a high and holy day, and whether we as brothers and sisters, whatever you want to call yourself, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, this is a high and holy day. It's a Shabbat day. It's a day that He has set apart, that He has put His stamp of approval on, even prior to selecting Israel as His nation and as His people, even prior to that, because we see with the Mashiach, Yahusha, Mashiach, that you refer to as Jesus Christ, even in His time that He ministered here on earth, and they try to throw some indictments on Him and get Him to admit to breaking the Shabbat, and what they were doing was illegal, but where did our Messiah take them? He took them all the way back to the beginning and said that man was not made for the Shabbat, but Sabbath was made for man. And when we read it in English, it says man, but what our Messiah had spoken in the Hebrew, he called him Adam. He said Adam was not made for Shabbat, but Shabbat was made for Adam. And then he finishes that up and says, I am the Adon of Shabbat, or in English, I am the Lord of the Sabbath, which means He is the ruler and He has complete authority on the Shabbat, on the Sabbath. So if He is the ruler and has complete authority on the Sabbath, who is man to do away with it or to say it's no longer in existence? Anybody who says that is following under the influence and the spiritual guidance of the adversary of our Messiah, because he never did away with it. And all throughout the book of Acts, if we were going to do a study today on the book of Acts, all throughout the book of Acts, they always went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day. It was, we have in the Torah here, we have references where it was the Mashiach's custom. It was the Mashiach's custom in Luke 4 and 16. And he came to Nazareth where he had been brought up, and as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up to read. So this was what we're doing right now. When it becomes our custom, our practice, our manner of life, we're following in the steps of the Messiah. We're actually following in His steps. This is what He has done. If He was here today, if He descended out of the Shamayim, out of heaven, if He descended out of heaven, He would come into the synagogue or the gathering on the Shabbat. That's what he would do. So what we are doing, I want to encourage, just take the beginning of this class and just encourage everybody that what we are doing and the custom and the practices we're keeping is in line with the teachings of the book. We're not outside of the teachings of the book. We can rest assured. I don't know about you, but in my spirit, I'm at ease. I'm at comfort. I know I'm doing what he would do if he was here. And since he's not here, who are to be his witnesses? Since he's not here, we're to be his witnesses. We're the ones to show the world, be a light unto the Gentiles. This is how we do it. This is how the Messiah did it. And even those who followed after Mashiach, if you go to the book of Acts, and I'm just going to pull up just a couple of scriptures here. I think it's in the 16th chapter of Acts, and streaming down here, and it says that Paul and Silas, there it is, 16:21, Acts 16:21. We see where Paul had taught customs unto the Romans, because they said that we don't have to observe these customs. We're Romans. So this is something that Paul had taught them. And if you read all throughout the book or the chapter of Acts, the 16th chapter of Acts, if you read through there, you'll find out that he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath, and then you have the 17th chapter of Acts. I'm going to go to 17 and verse number 2, and it says, "And Paul, as his manner was, went in unto them, and 3 Sabbath days reasoned with them out of the scriptures." So his manner or his custom was to go into the synagogue on the Sabbath. And there's other scriptures that we can use and pull out, the 13th chapter of Acts, the 15th chapter of Acts, the 18th chapter of Acts. We can go on and see where Shaul had went into the synagogue on the Sabbath, and that was his custom and his practice. So all that we're doing today is simply what the custom and practice of our Messiah. Now, it's difficult for some because it's not something that they have been taught or learned, and so when you come in with the truth that's in the scriptures, if you have not been taught this or learned in this way, then after a while, or when you first hear it, it sounds kind of strange to you. It sounds like, well, you're keeping customs and practices, you're outside of Christ. I've even heard somebody say, if you keep the Shabbat day, that puts you under the law. If you keep the Shabbat day, that puts you under the law. But before there was even given any law, he had given it to Adam in the garden that he was supposed to keep the Shabbat. So just want to say that today, just kind of get us started here, and as people continue to come in, and we have to really be careful of the things that we are taught and what we listen to, especially if it's not found in Torah. If you can't go to the scriptures and learn in the scriptures your manner of life, your custom and your practices of life, if you can't find them in scripture, then there's a good chance that maybe I need to redirect myself and start lining myself up with Torah. You'll hear me say Torah today. Torah is the word that was given, the oracles that came down from the heavens, or Shamayim. When I say Shamayim, I mean heavens. Torah is the word. We see in John, the Gospel of John, and it says in the beginning, or it says in the beginning was the word, or Torah, and Torah was with Elohim, and Torah was what? Elohim. So he is his word. He is his word. And so you'll hear me say Torah today instead of the word. You'll hear me say Torah. You'll hear me say, probably make reference to, instead of heaven, I'll probably say Shamayim. I know one time somebody said, well, why don't you just get a list, get a piece of paper, and just write down the English word and then the Hebrew word that you're using so that we can kind of go and have a kind of a guideline. So I'll try to, when I'm saying certain words, I'll try to say the English word and the Hebrew word so we kind of get an idea of what I'm saying. You'll hear me say Mashiach. Mashiach is Christ, or the anointed one in English. When you hear the word Christ and you hear the word Mashiach, it's the same thing. It's Mashiach in Hebrew. It's Christ in English. His name was translated from Yahusha to, in the Greek, you have Iesu. In the Latin, you have Jesus. And then English, you have Jesus. That's what you have. And so you'll hear me say his Hebrew name today, and then the English name that it was translated into. In the book of John, the Gospel of John, chapter 19, what I'm doing is just kind of setting up some things today. Chapter 19 and verse 19 and 20, and Pilate wrote a title and put it on the cross, and the writing was Jesus, Yahusha of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. King is Melech. Melech of the Jews. Jews is Yahudim. So it was Yahusha, Nazareth, Melech, Yahudim is what he says there. And Nazareth is actually Nazarene. In Hebrew, it's kind of like the Nazarene. So if somebody says they are of the way, what they're saying, they're of the Nazarene way. And so then in verse 20, it says, this title then read many of the Jews, Yahudim, for the place where Yahusha, Jesus, was crucified was nigh to the city, and it was written, and here's the different languages that it was translated in. His Hebrew, it was written in Hebrew, it was written in Greek, and it was written in Latin. So if you could not speak Hebrew or read Hebrew, or if you could not read Greek, and this is the Koine Greek that they had back in that day, or you could not read Latin, you would be totally lost. So it's through translation of the Latin Vulgate into English. The last translation that we have that was authorized by the Roman Catholic Church was the English translation in the 17th century. And so if you could not read Hebrew, Greek, or Latin, you wouldn't have known what it said. But we have the translations now being translated into English. So now we can, since we speak English and that's the only language we know, we're reading an English book. But what we have to understand is what we have is a translation. What we have is a translation. And that's how we have to look at it. Now, some people would take the translation and put the translation above the original. Now, you can, if that's your, if that's how you feel, you can do that. But everywhere in this book, if you want to reference it, it'll give you a reference into the Greek and into the Hebrew, because that was the original, his original name that was given to him by his father and mother was a Hebrew name. In fact, the Most High told Joseph what his name was supposed to be, because his name means Yah saves. Yahuwah saves. That's his name. So when you say Yahusha, and I know some say, Yahweh Shai, some call the Father Yahweh and Yahweh Shai, some say Yahuwah and Yahusha. But it depends. When you look at those different translations, it's the period of time of when that Hebrew was translated, and so that's how you come up with it. Now, somebody might say, well, what's the name should we use then? Should we use his Hebrew name? Should we use his Greek name? Should we use his English name? Now, you have a lot of people. Let's go to Acts chapter 6. Acts chapter 6 and verse number 1. You have a lot of Hebrews that spoke Greek. That's all they spoke was Greek. They did not speak the Hebrew language at that time. They spoke Greek. You had Hebrews who spoke Hebrew. We see that with Brother Shaul, because Brother Shaul said there was a time where he was speaking Hebrew unto them and they would listen, but when he spoke Greek, they wouldn't listen to him. So in Acts chapter 6 and verse 1, it says, and in those days when the number of the disciples was multiplied, and there arose a murmuring of, notice it says, Grecians against the Hebrews, because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration. Now, just looking at this verbatim in English, you would think that you've got the Greeks against the Hebrews, just by looking at it in the translation of the English. But that's not what he says. If you look up this word in Acts 6 and 1, and I go into the Greek text, that Grecian is G 1675, G 1675, and then I pull that up, and actually it is Hellenist. It was Hellenist, and it gives you the definition here. A Hellenist was what? A Greek-speaking Jew. So you had these Hebrews, these Hebrews that were speaking Greek, and they were called Hellenists. If you don't do your research, you would think the Greeks were against the Hebrews, and that's not what it's saying. These were Hebrew people. They were all Hebrews, but the ones who were called Grecians or Hellenists were actually Hebrews that spoke Greek. So you have some that will use the Greek. They would speak to you in Koine Greek. They were still Hebrews. They just spoke Koine Greek, and then you had the Hebrews who spoke Hebrew language. So, and there was some murmuring and some complaining, and so, they had to get it straightened out between the different languages. But that's why on the cross, like when I brought it out in John 19 and 20, it was written in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin, because those were the dominant languages at that time. Now today, the dominant language is English, and that's the language that most of us read and study is out of English. But on today, on the Shabbat day, you'll hear me use his Hebrew name and the Hebrew, and so if you might not know what it is, I'll try to do say the Hebrew and the English so that there's no confusion. So I just wanted to bring that out. Now we've gone through the beginning of the 7th month where they blew the trumpet. We had the Feast of the Trumpet. We just went through atonement, right, atonement. As some call Yom Kippur, it's the atonement, and it's a day that it's a national holiday to Israel, to Yasharal. Yasharal, Hebrew, Israel, English. But it was a national holiday to Yasharal, Israel, to afflict themselves, to go into a period of like it says in Torah here, or the word Torah. You go to Leviticus 23 and verse number 27, and he says, also on the 10th day of this 7th month, there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be a holy convocation. Now, the holy convocation is when they would come together. They were supposed to come together. And let me just put this out there. I'm studying this and I'm learning. I'm studying this and I'm learning because this is not something that my teachers have taught me. And then, that might be a question, well, why didn't your teachers teach you that? Because they taught what they knew. They taught what they knew. And so, well, why don't you teach what they taught you? Because then I would just be a parrot. I'm just parroting everything they said unto me, but instead I'm searching the scriptures, allowing the Ruach Spirit to guide me into all truth. If we don't have, I'm gonna say this: if you don't have a prayer life, then you're really gonna find it. You're gonna have a hard time today. All of us should have a prayer life where we're going before the Most High, and through. You have to realize that we did not always have access to the Most High. We did not have access to Him, but He has given us access now through His only begotten Son. Through Him we have access, because Yahusha, Jesus, said in John 14:6, He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto Abba, Father, but by what? By me. So my only access now to the Father is through His only begotten Son. My only access to Abba, is through His Ben. Without His Ben, I can't, or His Son, I can't get to Him. And so I say that because now that we have access unto Ab, our Father, we need to be praying. We need to be seeking Him in prayer. There should be a steady prayer life. It has to be a part of my day. It has to be a part of my character. It has to be a part of my definition of who I am. It says in Brother Shaul brings out, and Yahusha, Jesus gives us the parable in the 18th chapter of Luke. He said men ought to always pray and not what? Faint. Because if you ain't praying, you're going to faint. And faint means, does it literally mean I'm just going to faint? Faint means you're going to be unconscious. You're not going to be alive to Him. His Spirit is not alive in you if you're not praying. My prayer is my consciousness with Him. If I'm going to be conscious, I have to have a prayer life. If you're not praying, you're not conscious before Him. And we ought to be so thankful that I've got, now I couldn't call Him Father before. The only way we can call Him Father, let me show you in Romans chapter 8, I think it's right around 28. No, it's not 28. Romans 8 and 15. I'm going to read verse 14 and 15. Romans 8, 14 and 15. He says, for as many as are led by the Ruach, Spirit of Elohim, that's another, I call him Elohim because of the study that I've done. And do you guys have a minute? Can I just bring this out to you? Or I'm not trying to be offensive to anyone. This teaching is not to offend anyone, and I'm not here to destroy somebody's faith or cause you to not want to live faithfully before Him. That's not why I teach this, but I don't use sometimes you hear me say it, but I'm trying to move more towards Elohim than God, and the reason for that is in my study. In my study here, now this is the etymology dictionary. This is an etymology online dictionary, and so I usually get a lot of words, and I'll reference those words in etymology or the origin of words. And so this is the word God, and just kind of read this to you. Some of I'll try to pronounce some of this, but God, also God, God, Old English God, supreme being, deity, the Christian God, image of a God, godlike person, from Proto-Germanic. So if that was just all of the definition there, I would probably be okay with it, but you have to keep reading. I don't know, online, can you guys see that in the chat room? You probably can't see that. I don't know if I can make this any bigger. Can I? Well, I guess I can blow it up, but then I'm going to have to. Those in the chat room, can you really see that? If you can't, you just have to get the etymology online dictionary and then look it up yourself. But it goes on to say, after the Proto-Germanic, Guthen, source also of Old Saxon, Old Frisian, Dutch, God, Old High German, Got, German, Got, Old Norse, Ghoul, Gothic, Gup. Now, and as I kept reading, this is the reason why I kind of pulled away from it, which is of uncertain origin. Uncertain origin, listen, perhaps from pi, and pi, as I did a research on pi, the only thing I could come up with pi is in the Greek. Pi is like the 16th letter in the Greek language. Then you have pi that deals with the circumference of a sphere, but it never gives you the actual circumference. That's why pi never ends. It just goes on and on and on, right? They put a bar over it because it's like infinitude. So this is what it's talking about. It's an uncertain origin. It's like infinitude. Where does it come from? But then he goes on to say that which is invoked, source also of Old Church Slavic zovo, to call. Now, then you have the Sanskrit, which is huta, or invoked, an epithet of Indra, from the root guo, to call, invoke. Now listen to this. To call, invoke, the notion could be divine entity summoned to a sacrifice. So when people would call on that, they're calling on a divine entity to a sacrifice. So when they said got or gup and all that, they were calling a deity to their sacrifice. Okay, so let's look at this. But some trace it to pi, gutto, poured, from root gul, to pour a libration. Pour a libration. Source of Greek king, to pour. Also in the phrase gut, Gaia, gut Gaia. And gut Gaia means poured earth, referring to a burial mound. Then you see found. Then it says, given the Greek facts, the Germanic form may have referred in the first instance to the spirit immanent in a burial mound. And then it says, see also Zeus. Then he goes on to say, in either case, not related to good. So when they use those words, gup, got, ghoul, when they use that, it was to summon a deity to a sacrifice. It wasn't something that was meant for good. So then it says here, the next paragraph, popular etymology has long derived God from good, but a comparison of the forms shows this to be an error. Moreover, the notion of goodness is not conspicuous in the heathen concept of deity. And in good itself, the ethical sense is comparatively late. What is he saying by that? When we say God, we're calling on God, and we think it's a good in a good sense, that's only come to our understanding or definition lately. Because in its origin, that's not what it meant. So if you want, yes, you got a question? Well, that's why we're going to the origin here. They're calling on a deity to a sacrifice. That's basically what it was. But it says that in their reference of this, it was nothing that was done in a good sense, like, how we use it. I pray God be with you, and we're using it in that kind of sense, and God bless and all that. And our understanding of it being in a good sense has only come lately to our terminology, because in its origin, that's not what it meant. So yeah, when you say the God of this world, it could be calling for the God of this world. If it's a false deity that you're referring to, yes, yeah. So, but for me, since that's not what they called him, again, you get into the translations of the book. In the Torah, that's not what they called him. When in Torah, they called him Elohim or Elohim, which means you're the supreme one. Now, lately, it says that he became the God of the Christians, or the Christians' God. So that's why we use it in a good sense, because the Christians are calling on God, so we use that in a good sense. But they were calling on God before the Messiah died on the cross. They was calling on God. Yeah, they was calling on a lot of ones, So it says, compared to it, this has just been done lately. So, and this might address what you're saying. The next paragraph says, originally a neuter noun in Germanic. The gender shifted to masculine after the coming of Christianity. So they was calling on it before Christianity, but it was kind of like a neutered term. It didn't become masculine until Christianity, because you had the Mashiach, he died, he rose, and so now they're referring to that person as God, but not in the original sense that the word was created, or the history of the word. So that's why, and after reading all of this, that's why I choose to use Elohim or Elohim, because that's what they refer to him as, because Elohim, now you're dealing with the omnipresent, invisible, all-powerful Ruach, spirit, when you say Elohim or Elohim, and so they had different, we like to lump everything together in one word. We like to lump it all in one word. That's not how they were. That's not Yasharal. Yasharal didn't lump everything into one word. They had certain, this is what this meant, this is what that meant. But for us, a lot of times we want to lump everything into one word. That's not. So he goes on to say, Old English God probably was closer in a sense to Latin numen, a better word to translate deus, because they're what the Latins called their dynamis, or their God, they called him deus. Deus was a God. So when you see deus or domini or domini, or what's that other word that they use in Latin for it's like deus, domini, dominus. Yeah, domini, dominus. Yeah. That, we think we're referring to one thing, but we use words and terms ignorantly, because that's how we're taught. We don't, hey, that's what I was taught all my life. I don't know anything different until I start to research and study, and then I start to understand, oh, wait a minute, So he goes on to say, a better word to translate deus might have been Proto-Germanic. Now, the English language comes from the Germanic language. It was a Germanic language, and then you got the Anglo-Saxons, and then they call it English. But if you study English, it goes back to a Germanic language. So the origin of English is a Germanic language. Oh, did you? Yeah. Okay. That's the Ruach. And then it says, and Sus, But this was used only of the highest deities in the Germanic religion and not of a foreign god or gods. And it was never used of the Christian God. So when you look at the Latin Vulgate, which is where we get our English translations from the Latin Vulgate, when they were using dunamis, deus, domini, they were not referring to who we refer to. I mean, when we use that word, we know who we're talking about, but if you study that word in this origin and coming from the Latin Vulgate, they were not talking about who we talk about as our Messiah. They was talking about their deities. So when you go into the Latin and the Latin Vulgate and you see deus, domini, and dunamis, you know, they're not talking about that Hebrew Messiah. They're talking, because it says here, it doesn't refer to a foreign one. They use it for their deities. I don't know if people are following or not, but I mean, any questions out there? The only reason why I say all that is because this is during my study and my research, to research things and to study things, because most of us don't read Torah. Let's face it, most of us do not read Torah. We pretty much rely on our feeder. We're subject to our feeders, and we rely on the ones who are feeding us. We're not reading Torah for ourselves and trying to study Torah. And there's nothing, wait a minute, let me put this right. I just want to give an understanding, because what we're doing is what the Mashiach did for us. Mashiach was the sower of seed, right? Wasn't he the sower? And when you look at the sowing of seed and how he sowed seed, the sower would get all the seed, and what would he do? He would just kind of throw it out like that, right? And have the seed would go out into the wind, and then it would settle down on the ground. That's why he said the sower go out to sow seed. Some fell on stony ground, some fell where? On good ground, some fell, what was the first place it fell? On the wayside? I mean, so he's throwing out seed, and it goes in all these different directions and settles certain places and everything. And depending on where it settles is depending on what kind of fruit that's going to come up or what kind of harvest that you're going to have. But when you look at the sowing of the seed and how he would sow out the seed, they're still doing that today, and that's why a lot of us, we go to our assemblies, we go to our feeder, because the feeder's out there sowing out. That's what he's supposed to do, sow out seed. You know, and then you have some that's sown on good ground. Some people take it. They're able to take that if their heart is a heart of flesh and it's malleable, you know, because in Hosea, I think it's the prophet Hosea, the prophet Husha or Hosea, it says, break up the what? Stony ground, you know, of your heart, and make sure you got that malleable, so that when the sower sows out the seed, that seed can get planted. Most of us are not the sower of the seed. That's why a lot of us, we have a sower. And he even says, I'm going to give you Ruha, shepherds, that they translated into pastor, which is just an English surname. You had Judge Pastor, who was the judge over Conrad Murray's trial, when he was on trial, because they said, the family took him to trial, said he murdered Michael Jackson. So the judge over that trial was Judge Pastor. So they would address him, Judge Pastor. Was he a Ruha or a shepherd? No, that was just his surname. It was just a surname, because if you look up pastor, if you did a search on pastor, you'll find out that pastor is an English surname. It's just an English surname. So he says, I'm going to give you Raha or Ruha, which is shepherd. I'm going to give you a shepherd. What does that shepherd do? Let's go to Jeremiah 3, and 15. Jeremiah 3:15, and he says, I will give you shepherds, or it says pastors in English, but if you do a research on this word, you go into the Greek, or no, I'm sorry, because we're going to the Hebrew text, and it's H7462, and you look up H7462, it's Raha. Raha. H7462 is Raha, and it's a shepherd that feeds. Go down to HV in the ancient Hebrew lexicon, HV. So I scroll down here to the letter H. Raha. It's a pasture, one who provides and protects the flock and takes desire in them. And then V, the context it's being used in, to provide feed or pasture to the flock, to provide feed. And so it's Raha. So when you hear Raha, Raha is a shepherd, and what the shepherd does is he provides feed. He's kind of like the sower. He's going out to sow the seed. And so the seed is thrown out there. Depending on your heart now, I can be up here sowing seed. It depends on your heart how that seed is going to land, and if it's landing on the wayside, if it's landing on a stony ground, if it's landing on good ground, depending on the condition of your heart, will determine whether you bring forth what? 30, 60, 90. All of that depends on your heart. Now, the Ruha doesn't make the heart. The shepherd doesn't make the heart. The shepherd only feeds it. And so he says here, I will give you Ruha, according to mine heart. According to whose heart? The Most High's heart. According to my heart, which shall feed you, because that's what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to feed you with what? Knowledge and understanding. So once the seed is sown, you're to gain knowledge and understanding. Now, with Brother Shaul, when he was sowing seed, what did the Bereans do? When Apostle Paul or Shaul, when he was sowing out seed to the Bereans, what did the Bereans do? They checked him. And how did they check him? They went back to Torah. Those Bereans went back to Torah after the Apostle Shaul taught. They went back to Torah to see if what he was teaching was true. So there has to be some study. Now, you might not be reading the Bible or reading Torah, but if the seed is being sown and he's sowing the seed, then now that seed has, depending on where it goes, you go to Torah. You go to Torah. So every time you have a feeder and he's feeding you, all that scripture and everything he's feeding you, you should go back to Torah, open up that and read it and study it and check it. That's, what does he say here in 1 Thessalonians 5 and 21? What does he say? Prove all things. You got a teacher, you got a feeder, you better prove all things, which means after he feeds, after he throws out that seed, you better go and start getting them scriptures and looking them up and reading them and studying them. Wait a minute, you said something here, but I see something here, it's written here. And because every feeder now, and as you're feeding, you know what else does feeding that we have to be very careful of? You know what this is, the sower of the seed, and how he's sowing out the seed and he's just throwing it out like that? It's a broadcast. It's a broadcast. So what do you mean by broadcast? Because he just broadly flings it out there. And a sower can't hold on to the seed, and he ain't supposed to just drop the seed. He's supposed to, and that motion there is a cast. So he's casting out. I don't know everybody's heart, so I'm casting out the seed. I'm just keep throwing it out there, casting it out there. We'll see if it lands on stony ground, on the wayside, or if it lands on good ground. That depends on your heart. So the sower is doing it. Now, you know who else has crafted that and has used it to the nth degree and has been very effective with it? That old devil and all his angels that fell with him, they do it very well. They broadcast. Whenever you go to you listen to a broadcast, they're trying to sow seed. Oh, I listen to such and such broadcast. I listen to such and such broadcast. You could turn on your television, and listen to all kind of broadcasts, and all they're doing is just broadcasting. They're throwing out seed. They're throwing out seed. And a lot of us, we're hooked. There's certain things that's broadcasted. We're hooked on it. We're hooked on it. In fact, we're more hooked on the broadcast of the world than we are on the broadcast of the seed, of the sower. Because all they're doing is they learn how to sow seed. And so you get one of these in your house, and you start selecting all the different broadcasts. You can't turn this on without seeing a broadcast. You cannot turn on your TV without seeing a broadcast. Everywhere you go, flip the channels. All of them broadcasting. Throw out seed. Throw out seed. He knows how to manipulate. He'll manipulate with propaganda. Do you know that it's not good for us to stress our bodies out? It's not good for us to walk in fear. You actually bring down your immune system. If you're afraid of everything, I can't even wake up in the morning. I'm just so afraid. I'm so fearful. Every time you turn on TV, you're just afraid of this. Every time you go out, you're afraid. You live a life of fear, and then you're stressed out. That brings down your immune system to where you're very susceptible to certain diseases and things like that. So now the enemy knows that. So what do you think he's broadcasting? What do you think he's broadcasting? He's broadcasting fear. He's broadcasting stress. He wants you to be afraid. And some folks, because I had to pull off a lot of mainstream media and news and stuff. I had to pull off of that. Once I learned what's going on, I'm not walking in fear. I told Sister Hassett, we're not walking in fear. Because doesn't he say, what comes with fear? Torment. He says with fear comes torment. So if you're fearful, I'm so afraid, I'm afraid to go out of my house. I'm afraid to go here. I'm afraid to do this. I'm afraid of everything. I have life phobia. I'm afraid of life. And then, the stress that puts us on. We're put under stress. So all of these broadcasters, what they're doing when they broadcast, they're making you sick. They're reducing your immune system so that you can get sick. They know what they're doing. That old Satan is so clever. He's working a number on us, and we don't even know it. We don't even know it. We don't even know it. So the sower went out to sow seed, and so you have to prove all things, and even Paul, Shaul, they checked him. So we've gone through our feast, and we're coming up on the last feast, the last national holy day of this year, even on the Hebrew calendar. And we try to follow the Hebrew calendar and not the Greco-Roman calendar, because the Greco-Roman calendar, the Most High did not give us the Greco-Roman calendar. He didn't. That's the calendar that was given to us. And so, we march to that tune. But if you really want to get into a deeper understanding of the book, then you have to go on the Hebrew calendar. Now, this is something that was told me. I was told this, and it made me think. It really made me think, because you don't see it on the Greco-Roman, or if you follow the Greco-Roman calendar, you're not going to see it. The only way that you're going to understand some things that are wrapped into Torah, the only way you're going to understand it is if you understand. For everything that comes from heaven, or the Shamayim, everything that comes from the Shamayim, most of it is just above us anyway. There's things that he speaks to us that we're not going to understand unless he reveals it. There has to be that element of revealing, because as high as the heavens are from the earth, what does he say? So are my ways above your ways, and what else? My what? My thoughts above your thoughts. So the very thought of him is so highly elevated that if he don't open it up to us, we ain't getting it. You ain't gonna get it. You just ain't gonna get it. There's a lot of things, even when you get to what the book that we call Revelation, even the book of Revelation, and our mindset, because of the culture and the language that we're from, our mindset is Revelation is chronologically. That's not the revealing of him. That's not his revealing to see a timeline, because there's things in Revelation, as he's revealed it, things in Revelation, that's what it's for. It's to reveal things that have happened. Well, I don't know. Y'all, stay with me. Stay with me. Yeah, it'll drop on you after a while. Thank you. Can I get a cup of coffee? Thank you. So, he's given things to Yasharah, or Israel. He's given things to them. And there's a lot of teaching that you don't have to know Israel. You don't have to know Yasharah. I ain't in Israel. I ain't with them Hebrew folks. I mean, you have a lot of people who have that mindset. Let's go to Psalms 147. 147 and verse 19. He says, he showeth his Torah unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgments unto Yasharah, Israel. If I fail to understand Yasharah and Jacob, then there's so many things that's going to be so far over your head, like the heavens are above us, and his thought, you just ain't going to get it. And that's how a lot of people are. They just don't get it. There's a lot of things. You can read certain things in Torah, in Scripture, and don't even have the understanding of it. And then, with the limited understanding that you do have, you try to explain it absent of Jacob and Yasharah. Which, if you do that, then you get off on a tangent. You get off on what you think you know is truth. Listen, He hath not dealt so with any nation. There's no other nation that he has dealt with like he's dealt with Yasharal. So for us to just totally, and you have people who come into the body of the Mashiach, they're called it's the ecclesia, the called out ones. They come into the body of the Mashiach, and they totally discard Yasharal. And that mindset will keep you out of some of the dark sayings, some of the deep things, some of the mysteries that's hidden in Scripture. It's hidden in Torah. But because we just do away with so much, so Genesis 6 and 3, and I was tooting my horn. I was tooting my horn. Y'all heard me say it. I'm halfway through my life. Y'all have heard me say that before. I'm halfway through my life, because he promised us 120 years. So I'm halfway. And so I would go to this scripture. And Yahuwah said, my Ruach shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh, or nephesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. And so I took that in the lens and the perspective that I had. I'm just looking at it on the surface. And how we look at it on the surface, that's what we see. But if we don't know Torah and we don't know how he had brought out a nation and a people, and he gave them the time clock. The time clock, and this is not new. I've heard this before when I was growing up. The time clock centers around who? Israel. Yasharal. I was raised up like that. You follow Yasharal, you'll follow the time clock of the Most High. I mean, it all centers around Yasharal. And that is true. But now we have to unpack it and look at it in its, all of Yasharal, from the time that he chose Yasharal and everything that he has given Yasharal. So I didn't discover this. This was taught to me. So if you look at the time clock of Yasharal and what he gave Yasharal or Israel, he gave them the feast days. He told them when they came out of Egypt, this is the beginning of months, which is all your months together. This is your beginning, which is the month of Abib. In that, he gave them different feasts. We got 7 feasts. Also, he told them, if you look at the what's in Yasharal, he says you're not supposed to take a brother and make him a slave, but if you do, then what? After how many what? 7 years, you got to let him go. You let him go after 7 years. He don't want you to take a Hebrew as a slave, but if you do, after 7 years, you got to let him go. So you look at his that 7. You have to look at, in all of your unpacking and studying of the scriptures, you have to keep a balance and a mindset. You can't just take one scripture and run off with it. You can't do that. You have to have 2 or 3 witnesses. You have to know how to layer this. Precept upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line, here a little, there a little. That's how we understand doctrine. That's how you teach doctrine. So if you got a feeder broadcasting one scripture and building a doctrine off of one scripture, he's doing it illegally. Doing it illegally. So Also in Yasharal's or Israel's calendar, also in that, and he gave them the feast days, he told them that, 6 years you can cultivate the land, but then what happens after that? The 7th year you let it rest. So we got that timing that's in there. He also gave us when you look, thank you. When you look at the feast, and after the feast of unleavened bread, and unleavened bread is 7 days, so you're going to have a Sabbath or a Shabbat in there, a Sabbath. But then after unleavened bread, what do you start counting? Yeah. You count 7 Sabbaths. You count 7 Sabbaths, and then after that 7th Sabbath, the first day now is when you have Shavuot or Pentecost. So you're looking at 50. You're looking at 50. What also is associated with 50 in the time clock or in the calendar of Yasharal when you're dealing with 50? When you're dealing with 50. What else is associated with 50? Anybody know? I got some Israelites, Bible thumpers in here. But what else do they, think now, in Yasharal, because he says, I've given it to Yasharal. I've given my Torah to Israel. I've given my Torah to Israel. I've given my Torah to Yasharal. He says, I've not dealt with no other kind of nation. No other nation has it. It's not in any other nation. So you have to look at what did he give. So he gave Israel a calendar. He gave Israel feast days. What else is associated with 50? I mean, we got Shavuot or Pentecost, but what else is with 50? You guys, as soon as I say it, you're going to know. The 50th year, thank you. Every 50 years is a jubilee. Every 50 years is a jubilee. So, and that's within Yasharal. He didn't give it to no other nation. Nobody else has it. So if you count the jubilees, now in our lifetime, we might see one jubilee. In fact, we're not even taught jubilees. We're not even taught jubilees, But in our lifetime, we'll probably see one jubilee. Now, if you're blessed, if he Baruch you, if you're Baruch, then you might see 2 jubilees. Might see 2. But what he was doing with Israel is he was counting, what he gave Israel was counting the day of man. So now, do the math. How, with this verse here, and Yahush said, my spirit shall not always strive with man. My ruach shall not always strive with man, for that he is also nefesh, flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Whose day is going to be 120 years? I mean, because you can look at this verse in the Hebrew, you go to man. Who's he dealing with man here? So he's dealing with Adam, right? He's look at, okay, C and N, but H120 is dealing with blood, okay? So what was that again? C and N. C is Adam. N there is dealing with man, because all man comes from Adam. right? So what he's saying here is Adam days are going to be 120. Now, if I understand, or if I'm looking at, and I want to break this down because a lot of times we don't live to be that long, and a lot of people, you have some men who lived longer than that, and you have men who live less than that, and you see the different time periods of man, how the age is starting to be reduced down. And that's how we kind of look at it. But if you take Jubilees, which is what, 50? By how many years is given to man? What do you come up with? Just do the math. No, take the, anybody in the chat? You guys got anything out there in the chat? What? Take the year of Jubilee and multiply it by the day of man, or by what we see here. Here in this verse, we're looking at it as man is not going to live beyond 120. But he's not dealing with an individual man. He's dealing with Adam. Or, notice now, he says his days are going to be 120, or 120. The day of man is only going to be 120. But thank you. So the day, what he's saying is the day of man is only going to be 6,000 years. So if you look at the time clock of Yasharal, you look at the time clock of Yasharal, and I don't think that the people who call themselves Israel or the political Israel, I don't think they have the right time clock. I don't think they have the right time clock. When you look at the day of Adam and it's only going to be 120 jubilees. 120 jubilees. And some people might say, well, that doesn't make sense. It ain't going to work out like that. Okay. But in his Torah now, he explains everything in his Torah. If you want to see the beginning and if you want to see the end, it's all explained in his Torah. All of it's explained in his Torah. Because didn't he say in Isaiah 46 and 10, didn't he say there? What did he do? He declared the end from the beginning. From the very beginning, revelation, and we get to revelation, but revelation has been given. We can't break it down and see it, mainly because of our mindset, and there's a lot of things that's just hidden from us. But revelation has been given. It really has been given. Do I understand all of it? No, I'm learning. I'm learning. I want it to be unpacked. I want to unwrap it, but one of the first things that I do, especially when I go into the Ruach, and you have to have a prayer life, but I go into the Ruach and the Spirit and pray. One of the first things that I do is I have to dismiss myself. I have to just kind of just lay down and for a while there, I was just forgetting everything I learned. You, Ruach, open this up to me. You give me an understanding. Just open it all up to me. And there's times where I'll say certain things, and then he says, okay, well, let me show you that. Another one was when I used to say that the first day of the week was Yah's day. And y'all heard me say that. And it was almost like I had a vision. He hit me with a vision. I was going to drop dead in the pulpit. So I stopped saying it. And I said, let me back up. So there's times where when I go to study Torah, and I want to study Torah in the Spirit or in Ruach, and in order to do that, a lot of times I have to just drop everything, especially a lot of things that was taught to me. I got to let it go. Because he's given revelation. He's given it. It's there. We don't understand all of it. Yes.
And I did read it in the ESV, and it kind of understood to me that those who must mature, if you're mature, you think this way, and if anything you think otherwise, God will reveal it to you. So a lot of times, the mature is more there, caught up, whereas He will reveal it to us, like you were saying earlier. Some people don't understand this Hebrew. I don't understand Israel. I don't understand it. But it says here, nevertheless, whereunto we have already attained, let us walk by the same rule, let us mind the same thing.
This is good. I like that 3:15. Let us therefore, as many as be perfect, and that perfect is not dealing with I gotta make a perfect shot, I gotta do this perfect. It's dealing with maturity. You know, he says, as many as be mature. Where's your this is a maturation. This is a process of I think I've grown more in the last 4 years than I have in all my life. And mainly what I had to do, I had to just drop and give up a lot of stuff. I had to give up a lot. I couldn't approach this book with the pretense that I already know this. I had to repent and give that up. I gave up a lot of stuff. There's times where I had to repent because I thought I knew something. I found, oh my goodness, he opened up. I had to repent. That's what he wants from us is repentance. But instead, a lot of times he sees pride. Because you have a lot of folks that's just so full of pride. You got some folks sitting in certain levels, you can't teach them nothing. They so high and lifted up. You can't tell them nothing. It's like, really, I don't ever want to be like that. I don't ever want to be like that. Because if you're not careful, he'll have a child teach you. You so puffed up with pride, I'm going to have a child teach you. Because you're so puffed up. In fact, one thing that he hates, we know that, pride and arrogancy. He don't even like it. But you got a lot of folks that got full of pride now, full of pride. We have to be very careful of broadcasters or feeders. Got to be very careful. There's a reason why King Daud, Melech Daud, was anointed in the midst of his brethren and not in the midst of strangers. There's a reason why. Because when you look at his brethren, you're talking about those from his household who knew him. It's a dangerous thing to be anointed in the midst of strangers. Because strangers don't know you. They don't know you. You could be living 2 or 3 different lives in the hood and get anointed in front of your stranger. Folks don't even know who you are. They don't know your background. They don't know where you come from. And we anoint so many people. What about their brethren? What about where they came from? Who's close to them? Who's known them all their life? Who's known them all their life? Knows the family, knows how they lived as a child, knows how they were brought up, how they were raised. You got to be so careful now. You got transgender folk. Yes.
To make your point, but didn't the Most High go after those like Peter? He killed people. Moses killed someone. He don't go after the people who are on top. He go after the lowly folks. He's in the hood. He's talking to the people who ain't got nothing. He's talking to them, not the ones that got a good family background and a good high social economic status.
He pulls from the grassroots.
Yeah.
He pulls from the grassroots, but the point.
Your point is
the point that I'm trying to make is when somebody is anointed in a position like where Melech Daoud was, and usually when they anoint people in these high up positions, they're people that you're supposed to know those people. And so you give the example of Peter, and we can see the life of Peter. You can see how Peter was very boisterous and outspoken. He was somebody that would talk off the top of his head. Peter? Yeah. Yeah, he was.
But he ended up being one of God's chosen.
Now you talking about the apostle Shaul?
Yeah.
Okay.
But before he converted, he killed Hebrews.
He consented unto it. We don't see where he actually killed like Moses or yeah, I mean he was consenting unto their death. Shaul, but everybody knew Shaul. Shaul, whose feet did he sit under?
Gamaliel.
He sat under the feet of Gamaliel. So yeah, I'm not saying there's not some, maybe, I don't know if this is the right word. I'm not saying there's not criminal in your past. I'm not saying that. The point that I'm trying to make was they knew the character of the individual. They knew who he was. It wasn't a total foreigner. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't somebody that, Yahusha, Jesus chose fishermen. He chose young men. If you look at, and I was studying the catalog of Melech Daoud, King David, I was studying him and the men that he had chosen. The men that he chosen for his armor bearers and those who fought with them, you know what we would call them today? Gangbangers. That's what we would call them today, gangbangers. I don't want them gangbangers around me. That's who King Daoud chose. You look it up when he chose his men before he became king. He had 300 or 400 of them. There was some rough boys now. There was some rough boys. They was what we call gangbangers. They killed folks. Yeah.
And as you were saying that, how if the Most High chooses someone, strangers don't know their background, so strangers tend to be more accepting because they don't know them. But people from the neighborhood or the family know them. I think that sometimes can be an issue too because the Most High might choose someone who lived the most corrupt life, like more corrupt, what we consider the most corrupt. All things against the Most High is corrupt, but what man and our finite minds consider as being corrupt, and all of a sudden the Most High might anoint them to be his spokesperson or to be a mouthpiece for him, and then we don't give them no credit because we're like, no, they came from the streets, they came from the ghetto, they didn't even graduate from high school, they don't know anything, they're nobody, or they've been in prison because they murdered somebody as a teen, what I'm saying? So sometimes even us as, we might look at people we know and we don't give them the same acknowledgement as the Most High might because we're looking at their past, and Most High may have cleaned them up and started to use them for his service, and we can't judge off of their past because if he changes them, we have no right to put our mouth on anybody.
Yeah.
I know a whole bunch of people, like you were saying, I'm one of them. I found about $800 the other day, gave it back. That wasn't the first time. Come out of Chicago, come out the projects, gangbanger, dope dealer. I did all that.
Yeah.
He changed me. They didn't run from me.
Yeah, right.
Man, that's what they want. They want that, man. So you know what I'm saying? They want that. Now they can talk to me now. Well, he know why I've been here. He's not gonna judge me.
Right.
That's why I believe. Look,
yeah.
Matthew, Yahshua choose those guys like that. Yahshua chose them like that. It was rough. David chose some warriors.
Yeah.
Father said, no, I'm not going
Yeah.
to make the temple because you got too much blood on your hands.
Yeah.
Scared to death of David. It's still like
Yeah. And
right on both sides.
Right.
Like on both sides.
Mm-hmm. And I hear you. I hear you. There's a position where we elevate man, and the point that I'm trying to make is like King Daoud or Melech Daoud. It was it was in the midst of his brethren. So it wasn't with outsiders. It wasn't with, strangers. These are people who was in his same house that knew him and stuff. Now, yeah, I'm not saying people can't change. I'm not saying people can't change, because if that was the case, none of us is going, none of us could be chosen. Because you consider where we come from, but everybody wasn't a Melech. Huh? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everybody's not elevated to that position, like King Daud was. And so a lot of times we anoint and elevate people to certain positions and we don't know anything about them. And I don't think if I'm going to anoint somebody, I got to know something about this individual. I want to know something about them, But everybody is not put up in that position where King Daud is. Not that you can't be chosen and used and eat at the master's table, but to be in a position like that, and even, he made a covenant with Melech Daud. He made a covenant with them that his throne will never end, and then he was going to set, I really think King David, Melech Daud, I really think he probably thought he was going to come back and sit on that throne when he made that covenant with them. I kind of think that, but we know that when it's an everlasting throne and he's going to sit on it, he's speaking of his only begotten son, the Messiah, the Mashiach. Yahusha was going to come and sit on the throne of Daud because it's an everlasting throne now. I mean, he made that covenant with them. It's not going to end. So, and there's some people who think King Daud's going to come back and sit on that throne. There's a lot of people who believe it because he made that covenant with them, and it is an everlasting covenant. He made several everlasting covenants, and that was one of them. Melech Daud's throne is an everlasting covenant. And some people think, Daud's going to come back. But from my, and one thing we have to do when we get all the verses and in Torah and everything, we've got to let Torah explain it and put precept upon precept, line upon line, precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little, there a little. We got to bring it all together. We can't just take one verse and try to build off of one verse. It's got to be, what did he say here? From the seed of Daud, yeah, and everybody who sat on the throne, at least in the kingdom of Yehuda, everybody that sat on the throne was from David's seed. But if you go to the northern kingdom, the kingdom of Yasharal, those people sat on that were not of David's seed. Yeah, that was not of David's seed. So, I mean, you had all kind of kings sitting on there but he made that covenant with Daud. So, of his seed. So you got his lineage, and then it lets us know that once the Messiah comes or Shiloh comes, that's the last one. Because he says that, right? And he says the scepter will not depart from Yehuda until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. So Genesis 49:10. So we know that the last one that sits on that throne is the Messiah. And when he comes, it's not going to be no end. It's not going to be no end because it says that it's going to be an everlasting kingdom. It's not going to end. And the only way you can get into that kingdom, it takes a birth. Where Ab is, where the Father is, and and the kingdom that he dwells in and where he is eternal. It doesn't end. There's no death in it. There's no ending to it. When he wanted his people and when he created Adam, he created him immortal because he wanted to commune with them and to be with them. And so they had to be immortal. There's no death in Ab, our Father. Abba Yah. Ain't no death in him. So in order to get in his kingdom, if I want to be a resident in his kingdom, that means I have to live forever. I can't, because there's not going to be no death there. Now, a lot of people think his kingdom is already here. Well, if it is, why are folks still dying? Why is there so much disease? Why is there so much killing? Why is there, you mean this is his kingdom? Look at the world. You're saying this is his kingdom? It's, huh? Different kingdoms are going to come? Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, he taught us how to pray, and he said, you pray unto our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, and then it's like, thy kingdom come. We want that to come. We want your will to be done in earth, the Arats, as it is in the Shamayim. So we're still waiting for that. We're still waiting for that because if his will, if his kingdom is coming, it's going to descend down here, there's not going to be no more death. So when he says that we're going to be, when he says in John 3 and 5, he says, except the man's born of water and spirit, you can't enter into the kingdom or eternal life. There has to be a birth to get into the kingdom or eternal life. That's how we get into eternal life, is through that birth process. And he even says, yes.
In the last scripture you just read, we have the Blue Letter Bible, and it says, the sepulchre shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between the two, until tribute comes.
Tribute?
That's what it says, until tribute comes to him.
The tribute? Okay.
Genesis 49.
And I have to, we have to look at what does it mean by the tribute? Because actually, we refer Shiloh to the Messiah, but you know what else was called Shiloh? Mm-hmm. It's that Jerusalem. The city of Jerusalem, or city of Salem, or Jerusalem, the peace, is called Shiloh. So, actually we're still waiting for Shiloh to come, which is that New Jerusalem. But there's not going to be any end to it. It's going to be an eternal, everlasting. It's going to go on and on. And in order for us to enter into that everlasting or eternal life, in order for us to enter into eternal life, it takes a birth process. He says you have to be born of water and spirit in order to enter in. And who was he speaking to? Who he was speaking to, who he's speaking to here, right? Nicodemus, right? And so Nicodemus was a ruler of what? The Jews, or Yahudim. He was a ruler of the Yahudim. So he's speaking to all the Yahudim. All of the Yahudim. He's saying, if you want to get into the kingdom, you got to be born again. Just being Yasharal or Yahuda does not get you into the kingdom. It doesn't get you into eternal life. Just because you're Yahuda. I'm a Yahudi. I'm a Yahudi. I'm part of the Yahudim. I'm Yasharal. That doesn't get you in. Because he's talking specifically to them. He's not talking to Gentiles. Because some people say, well, this is for the Gentiles. He's not talking to Gentiles. He did not send his disciples out to the Gentiles. He sent them out to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, Yasharal. That's where he sent them. Yeah, he told them, don't go. I'm sending you to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So when you see Peter and he stands up, Acts 2:36, therefore let who? All the house of Israel, Yasharal, know assuredly. So he's speaking to Yasharal. He's not speaking to Gentile. So anybody that says they're a Yehudi or Yahudim or Yasharal, and that's my birthright, I don't have to do anything else because I'm them. This is who he's talking to. Y'all, you have to be born again. He gave it to Yasharal. That's why you can go to there's two places. Romans. Now, the reason why I go to Romans is because Romans 11 and verse number Romans 11, because Paul magnifies his office here. Okay, in Romans 11:13, he says, "For I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle to the Gentiles, I magnify mine office." So he sent his disciples out to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He gets Shaul and sends him out to the Gentiles. And so you had all of the disciples going out to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Then you have Shaul going to the Gentiles as their apostle. But notice what he tells the Gentiles, Romans 9:4. What does he tell the Gentiles? He says, who are Israelites, to whom pertaineth what? The adoption. So the adoption was given to the house of Yasharal. They had to be adopted or become sons. They had to get adopted back into compliance through the blood of Yahusha, Mashiach, Jesus Christ. Through that blood, they actually get the adoption, and it comes through Yasharal. So the adoption is given to them. Then you look at Galatians 4:4, but mainly verse 5. You see verse 4 of Galatians 4:4. But when the fullness of the time was come, Elohim sent forth his Ben, made of a woman, made under the law. And that you can't stop there. I used to just stop right there. You can't stop there because you have to go to the next sentence. We break things down in verses like this, but in the original writing, he just wrote. So we had to stay with the thought. Yeah, there's a comma, it's not a period. So we had to stay with that. But a lot of times people just want to pull one verse and stay right there. No, keep reading. keep reading, you know. Because we even do that in Revelations a lot of times. We take one verse and we want to stop right there. No, keep reading. Because he's about to reveal it to you. To redeem them that were under the law. Now, the only ones that were under the law was Yasharal, Israel. To redeem that we might receive the adoption of sons. And now that we have the adoption of sons, because ye are sons, Elohim has sent forth the Ruach of his Son in your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. Father, Father. So if you're not crying out to Abba, obviously you don't have the ruach of his ben, of his son. Because the ruach, it's not even you. Now you might be praying unto the Melech, the King, the Ben, Yahushua Mashiach, Jesus Christ. You could pray unto him, but if you have the ruach in you, the ruach now cries out to Abba. It's the ruach that cries it out. It's not even you, it's the ruach. That makes sense? That makes sense? Okay. Yeah. In Romans 11, I was just there. What was verse of that? 18 or somewhere? 15. Oh no, 13. Romans 11:13. Romans 11:13. See that? Right, because this whole chapter here is dealing with the grafting in of Gentiles into Yasharal or into Israel. Yeah, he divorced all.
When Yeshua came back, now he's going to bring us all back together.
Yeah, he is gonna unite the two sticks, which is Judah and Ephraim or Joseph. It says that in Ezekiel 37. It talks about the uniting of those two sticks. But he's gonna pull out of the Gentiles a people. Yeah, it's in Acts. Acts. Let me go to. I have to find this again. Is it Acts 13? And let me see if I can. Oh, right. Oh, now, no doubt. I mean, there's no doubt there. But when he's, okay, so we read it in Acts 2:36 where he's talking about all the house of Israel, which is all 12 tribes. All 12 tribes. And so he even told Peter that you're supposed to go out beyond Jerusalem. Right. Yeah. On what verse is that? Oh, the Pentecost, Shavuot. Yeah.
It was all mixture of people, but it was all Israelites. So I'm thinking Paul went to all of them. I know they all went out through the world, but
now I'm trying to find that verse, and it's kind of like Paul's testimony. Now in the 13th chapter here, in Acts, I'm in the book of Acts. Now, even when he went out to these other areas and he went into these cities, into the synagogues, it was not just the Judah, because in all these other cities, when they went to the synagogue, and if you look at the temple in Jerusalem, he's not talking about the Gentiles couldn't get in. The Gentiles couldn't get in. He's not talking about the northern tribes, because the 10 tribes could get in because they were sons of Jacob. They were Israelites.
He said, I give you a ring. He divorced them. He said, leave them alone. Now when Yeshua came back, Now he's finna bring them all together. He's finna, father finna remarry them or something. Because he said, I can't mess with another nation. I'm married to you. Therefore, I will be committing adultery.
But
then in Rome, see, they had it in Rome, so.
But yeah, we could talk about that. but because when he divorced Israel, he divorced all 12 tribes.
No, he didn't. He said, and he's gonna show mercy on Judah because Judah still kept some of the laws and stuff.
You have to read Ezekiel 16 because
he said after Israel I divorced her, he said you saw your sister, and then he said Judah, you saw your sister going to sin, and you turned out to be worse than them, but I will have mercy on you.
Yeah. I think he
It's a step-by-step study.
Huh?
It's a step-by-step study. By you explaining what you're explaining, you're going to broaden your teaching is broadened. So you kind of stay in the narrative once you get into the subject.
Yeah. We could talk about that.
It's about the Gentiles.
But it can be very broad.
I'm trying to find that in Acts 22:21, there it is. When
Israel, that's the 10 tribes. That's the ones he divorced. That's what he's sending them to. Now they had it in Rome. They had it in Rome. They did all this. We wouldn't obey them. They messed it all up. They was out there speaking Christianity, which is where it comes from. Roman Catholic, Constantine. So they had that already.
Okay, we can talk about that because the sons of the 10 lost tribes, they were still able to go into the synagogue. They were not excluded from the synagogue. They were still able to go into the synagogue.
Sun worshiping, sacrificing the babies, everything. You go with the king, see all they had then.
And even in Ezekiel, the chapter, the book of Ezekiel, when he told Ezekiel, look through the wall. I want to show you what they're doing.
Tammuz, they were facing the east.
Yeah.
In there praying
Yeah.
for Tammuz.
Yeah.
And he said, wait, come here, I want you to see something else. Took him in another room. It was like 23 men in there. And he said, I'm going to show you something worse than that.
Yeah. For Tammuz, yeah. That's in Ezekiel. But they were still, I'll do some more searching on that. But they were still allowed to go in the synagogue. Those even though they were,
Even though he divorced them, they was like Gentiles. They assimilated, and they were kind of just wrong with assimilating. Like before this started, we was Gentiles too. We assimilated all the way into the American culture. All this, the homosexuals, the pedophiles, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in this land, we assimilated right into that. See, just like they did.
Mm-hmm.
Now the Father calling all us back. Well, if I interrupted, I do apologize, but it was getting good.
Okay, brother, go ahead.
There's no ending to this.
Right.
This leads you to here and here and here. Be quiet, James.
No, we can talk about it.
Okay, brother.
We can talk about it. But I'm trying to go back to where I was. I don't even know how I got that far. I'm trying to go back to where I was.
Romans 11.
I want to go back before there. But anyway, we were talking. I was talking about in Genesis, the 6th chapter, and Day of Adam, which we're in, and how he's pretty much given us, for those who want revelation. Revelation is there. Revelation is actually there. He is the one that has to reveal it to you. But all of the revealing that he gives to you, he's pretty much given. Oh, my batteries are dead. He's given us. Just a minute. Let me.
But as time draws by, does it get unveil other stuff to you?
Oh yeah, it's a maturation, like we read that. Where's that scripture? Philippians 3:15.
Yeah. And he'll reveal it unto you. He will reveal it. It says towards the end, Philippians
Yeah, it doesn't all come at once.
He'll reveal it in your dreams as you sleep. He'll speak to you in your dreams. Scripture says it. If he can't reach you,
That's in Job.
he'll speak to you through your dreams.
Yeah, that's Job 32, somewhere around there. Yes.
I have a question, and it's a little bit off topic, but it still applies. I was listening to someone this morning, and do you think, you know how he has to judge for what the atrocities that was committed unto his children, even though he put him in the wilderness because of disobedience. Do you think that this COVID that's going on is part of this judgment that he's putting on these nations, or do you think that's just do you think that's part of his judgment? The only reason I asked that is because the person I was listening to, they were saying that's part of the judgment, and I mean it's got to be worse than that, obviously. But you think that's a part of the judgment?
He's
for how he treated how his people have been treated.
If you want to say a pestilence is a judgment, it is a pestilence, but
That's what I'm asking.
the Mashiach said that there's going to be pestilence towards the end.
Right.
So we have to expect pestilence to come. Now, if you want to say that that's a part of their judgment, you know, it's hitting everybody. It's not just one, you know, specifically to one nation or border. It's hitting everybody. You know, it's a pandemic. Pan means it's spread across.
Right.
You know, that's what pan means. So it's all over. It's not just to one nation. Now, if it's mainly pointed at one nation, you know, you could say it would be like in Egypt, because all the plagues and pestilence, everything that hit Egypt specifically. Egypt wasn't the only nation. That was just the nation where he had his people.
Well, I mean, you know, because like how the Israelites got spread, and he says it plainly in his word.
Yeah,
They went to the four corners.
The four corners.
So that would cover all the, you know, everywhere. But in Egypt, do you think there were people who didn't follow through, who were actual Hebrew Israelite slaves that didn't put the blood on their doorposts? Do you think every single one of them listened to what Moses or whoever told them to do? Or do you think there was some that kind of like high and mighty, like, oh, I'm not.
There are probably some that died. There wasn't a house where there wasn't anybody dead. That's what it said.
Could that apply to today? Like, even though he may be judging through COVID as one of the judgments, it still affects some of the children of Israel. You know what I mean?
He's
I don't
going to
know.
rain on the just and the unjust. So therefore, we will receive some of those plagues, and some of us will die.
Yeah,
it's the plagues, not because we're not righteous. You could be righteous and still die.
I know that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying.
Well, Aaron went to the
Ezekiel. In Ezekiel, is it 22? Okay, because in Ezekiel 21, and he's dealing with some judgment here. And verse number 3. And say to the land of Yasharal, thus saith Yahuwah, behold, I am against thee, and will draw forth my sword out of his sheath, and will cut off from among thee the righteous and the wicked. So there's a time where he can judge, and when he pulls his sword out to judge, it's going over everybody, the righteous and the wicked. He says in verse number 4, seeing then that I will cut off from thee the righteous and the wicked, therefore shall my sword go forth out of his sheath against all flesh. This is everybody, from the south to the north, that all flesh may know that I, Yahuwah, have drawn forth my sword out of his sheath, it shall not return anymore. So he can, when he sends out his sword for judgment, it's going to fall on everybody. Now, the righteous has hope in their death. that at the time of the resurrection they're going to come back. But then the wicked, you know, they have no hope in their death. So can he, you know, is he just going to kill the wicked and keep the righteous? Not when he. Another example I'm thinking about is when they were in the wilderness, and you had those who were murmuring and complaining. And what did he do? He started to slay all the people because they was murmuring and complaining. And then what did Moses go and do? No, he had to get he had to raise a. They put a serpent on the head or the top of a staff, and he had to run out in the midst of all these dying folks and put that staff there. But the only ones who were spared were who? The ones who looked up at this blazing serpent was the only ones that were spared their life. And then we see that comes with the Mashiach, because he says, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, that's how the Son of Man has to be lifted up. So that if we, you know, come unto him and be drawn unto him, we're spared the judgment of death, or being completely cut off from the Most High. So he was like that. So is he going to judge on the righteous and the wicked? Yeah. He's going to judge on all of them. So we're coming, you know, this feast that we have coming up. A couple of things I want to say. I kind of introduced this to you. Deuteronomy 32 and 7 and verse 8 and verse number 9. Kind of want to bring this out because it's always been his intent to dwell with his people. He's wanted to dwell with his people from the very beginning. When he created Adam, it says that he would walk with Adam when? In the cool of the day is when he would walk with Adam. He would come down and actually commune with his people, because when he made the Garden of Eden, it was in the mountain, and it was kind of like a shrine or a temple. It was where he would commune with Adam, commune with his creation, because that's what he always wanted to do. If you look at, I'm going to come back here, but in Ezekiel 28, and let's see, what verse was that? He talks about, it's verse number 13, 14. In 13 and 14, I want to look at 14 though. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, I have set thee so thou was upon the holy mountain of Elohim. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of fire. The Garden of Eden was up in a mountain. It was a holy place. It was kind of like a shrine. It was a place where the Elohim would come down and visit and commune with Adam, because that was his purpose when he made man. He made man so that he could commune with them. So what we're you know, and all this is leading up to the tabernacles, to where he even says in Revelation that he would tabernacle with his people. He's going to come and tabernacle. He's always wanted to do that. So in Deuteronomy 32 and verse number 7 and 8, these are things we're supposed to ask our Father, the elders, and they're supposed to tell us about these things. When the Most High, this is verse number 8, when the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance. Now, I'm reading this out of the King James, but I look at different versions to get a clearer insight. When he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Yasharal. Now, I'm going to read that. If you look at, somebody had brought out the blue letter already today, but who did that?
Sister Hazel, Sister Kelly brought ESV.
No, Vicky did.
Sister Fulton.
Okay. So in the blue letter in Deuteronomy chapter 32 and verse number, I'm going to read down here, and this is out of the English Standard Version. And I read out of this because there's some things that's in the English Standard Version you don't get in the King James, and then they give you footnotes, and they'll tell you. Now, in the blue letter it says, when the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders or the territories according to the of the peoples according to the number. Notice now it says according to the number of the sons of Elohim. So when he set the borders, and we know when he set the borders or the territories of mankind, you know when he did that? When he set the borders, we have the tables of the nations. When he set the borders of mankind.
What was the question? Genesis 10?
Genesis, yeah. Genesis, what chapter?
10?
Chapter 10. Because that's where you have the sons of Ham, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and he sends them out to their regions, their territories. So he divided them. But notice now, he says he did it according to, it's not, now the King James says the sons of Israel, but there was no Israel at that time. There was no Israel. If you look at, in this English Standard Version, and you see the footnote up there, it says, compare the Dead Sea Scroll and Septuagint. You compare that to the Masoretic text. So when you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Septuagint and the Masoretic text, which came first out of those three? Dead Sea Scrolls came out first. And then what came out after the Dead Sea Scrolls? What came after the Dead Sea Scrolls? What, the Septuagint. Because the Septuagint was 200 to 300 years before Christ came. Yes.
Okay, so this last Thursday, and I was looking, I have a chronological Bible and stuff, and I was reading in there, and they made mention of something called the Targum.
Targum, yeah.
Is that older than the Dead Sea?
I don't think that's older than the Dead Sea.
I don't know. I guess
because some of the things that they found in the caves, the Qumran caves, were Targums.
Oh.
Yeah, they date back to the times of the writings, but the Targums were kind of like, you know, they kind of predated like the Talmud, because the Targums kind of gave you a commentary on Torah, but it wasn't. From my understanding, from what I've read, I haven't read a lot about the Targums, but just kind of briefly touched on the Targums. Targums were kind of like, let me tell you what he's saying when he spoke to Moses about this, and they kind of wrote on that. It's not actually scripture, what we call canon scripture, but it's writings by some of the scribes, almost like the Talmud. Now the Talmud has gotten way off, and you know, that's paganism. Talmud's paganism. But if you get the Targums, they're closely aligned and almost in the same time period of writing, but it's I don't even think it's in Hebrew. I think it's in Syriac, a different language, or the Peseta. It's in a different language, if I'm not mistaken. And they're called Targums. But it says, compare the Dead Sea Scrolls to the Septuagint and the Masoretic text. So the Masoretic text says sons of Israel, but the Masoretic text didn't come out until the 4th or 5th century, when you had the Masoretes who say they're Jews but are not, and they've actually taken the modern Hebrew and they put vowel points on it. And when they took the modern Hebrew and put vowel points on it, they switched it from sons of Elohim or messengers of Elohim or angels of Elohim. I think in the Septuagint calls them angels of Elohim. Angels of Elohim is what the Septuagint says. The Dead Sea Scrolls says sons of Elohim. So when he separated all the people and gave them territories, he did it according to the number of the sons of Elohim, or the angels of Elohim. Now, some people might say, okay, where did you know, it's not foreign it's not foreign to him sending out angels. In the book of Psalms, let's go to the book of Psalms, chapter 78. 78. Let's go down to 20. Is it 30? In 78 here, he where's that verse at? Just bear with me for a second here. I was just reading that. It's dealing with because I thought it was 78 here, because he says he sent out his angels, or there was angels that were sent out. Oh, here it is. Okay, in Psalms 78 and 49, and if you read this chapter of Psalm 78, it's talking about, Yasharal, he had chose Israel, and then they went out into the wilderness and everything that happened in the wilderness. He even said in here, he gave them angels' food. We know what the angels' food is, right? The angel food was at manna on high. But listen to verse number 49. He cast upon them the fierceness of his anger, wrath, and indignation and trouble. And how did he do that?
By sending evil angels.
Evil angels in their midst. So he sent out evil angels in the midst of his people. Yes.
So there's good angels and evil angels.
Oh, yeah.
Both created of Yah.
Yeah.
So therefore, angels have their own free will.
I don't know. I kind of want to say they do, because you had the chief one who said that I will do this. I will ascend up on the congregation of the north. I will walk up and down in the Shamaim. I will be like the Most High. That kind of sounds like he had a free will. He got kicked out. We know that, but it almost sounds like it. And then we have the angels that sits around the throne. And at the time when you had King Ahab, and he got with King Jehoshaphat and wanted Jehoshaphat to join him to go to war. And he says, who's going to, persuade Ahab to go to war? And one of the spirits said, I'll be a lying spirit. And it was one of the angels or the spirit that sits around the throne. Even right now, around his throne up in heaven, he has a council of angels and sitting around. Now, we don't think like that in those terms, because we're not taught to think like that. But he does have a council. He has other angels. He even told us, be careful when you entertain strangers, because you might be entertaining an angel unaware. So for us to think that we are the only created beings, that's not mature thinking. That's not a perfect thinking, because he has a host of angels. He's got angels that sit around his throne. Okay, so he sent out, even to answer your question, possibly. I don't know. I can't teach on that, but that's a good question. I don't know. Do they have a free will?
We was looking at that. We were studying that last night, and yeah, so leave it at that.
Yeah, I don't know. But one thing I already acknowledge, there are other writings that we don't have. Even in the King James, they only give us 66 books. they said that they've only revealed about half of the Dead Sea Scrolls that they found. There's other scrolls that they found in there. They just haven't revealed them to us.
And some of them things that are hard to understand or haven't been revealed, I don't worry too much about them because I'm worried with my own soul salvation. So I really can care less if the angels have free will or not. I want to know about me and what I got to do to get into the kingdom.
Right.
That shouldn't even bother my mind that much. But, you know, those certain little things don't bother my mind. I'm not dwelling on stuff like that because I'm worried about what I got to do.
Right. Man, I mean, we all should. I mean, it's good to have more knowledge and wisdom, but yeah, some of it is we're not going to know all of this until we're with Him, and because it says we will know even as we're known. But that day's coming. We haven't got there yet. You know. So He did send out angels. Another place is in Exodus 23, and it's verse verse 20. Exodus 23:20. He says, "Behold, I send an angel before thee to keep thee in the way and to bring thee into the place which I have prepared." He says, beware of him and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him. Now, you know when this angel came, you know who seen this angel? Anybody know? Joshua. Remember when Joshua went into the land? He was getting ready to conquer the land after Abraham's death. I think it's in the first couple of chapters of Joshua. But he seen this huge angel, had his sword drawn. He says, are you on our side or are you on their side? Remember, y'all don't remember that? With Joshua?
It's coming to show us what it
In the book of Joshua.
Yeah, it's in Joshua.
Then they had to walk around the city 7 times and the walls came down.
That's Jericho.
That was there too when they went into the new kingdom.
Let me see where. Can somebody find that in Joshua where he sees this angel and his sword is drawn, and he wants to know, are you on my side or are you against?
5:13?
Is that 5:13?
Yeah.
Joshua 5:13.
Yeah.
And it came to pass when Joshua or Yahusha was by Jericho that he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there stood a man over against him with his sword drawn in his hand. And Yahusha went unto him and said unto him, art thou for us or for our adversaries? And he said, nay, but as captain of the host of Yahuwah am I now come. And Yahusha fell on his face to the arats and did worship and said unto him, what saith my Adonai unto his servant? So this was that angel that he was telling Moshe about in Exodus 23. So that's what he meant about that. So,
So Joshua is talking to this angel?
Yeah. This was the same one where he says in
He was a man. The scripture read that there was a man standing with the angel's arm. So the angel took in the image of a man.
Right, because I'm getting ready to bring out some more. He tells them about this in Exodus 23 and 20. He's going to send this angel to keep thee in the way, to bring thee into the place which I have prepared. So Joshua, where was Joshua getting ready to go into?
Into the land.
He's getting ready to go into Canaan. He's getting ready to go into the place that he had prepared for him. He says, but I'm going to send you my angel now. He says, you better listen to his voice. Don't provoke him because, he's going to help you. He's not going to pardon your transgression. My name is in him. He's going to help you to get into the land. Okay? So this was one place. Another place he sent angels into the wilderness. There were evil angels. But there is a heavenly host that sits around him. So even in Job 38 and 7, he says, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of Elohim shouted for joy. This was at the time of when he created the heavens and the earth. This is a time where he created the earth, because he's telling them, where were you when I did all this? Verse 6 says, whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened? Talking about the Arats. Or who laid the cornerstone thereof? Talking about the Arats or the earth. When the morning sun sang together and all the sons of Elohim shouted for joy. So in Deuteronomy 32 and verse number 8, he is actually... He's actually dividing the bounds or the territory by the sons of Elohim, or those stars, those sons, those angels that he has around the throne. He's dividing it. And then verse number 9 says what? For Yah's portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance. So Yahuwah, who did he choose? He chose Jacob. He said, I'm choosing Jacob. This is going to be my inheritance. Another one is in Psalms, and I think it's 77. 77 or it must be 76. 76, 1 and 2, it says, in Yehuda is Elohim known. His name is great in Yasharal. In Salem, and this is where we get Jerusalem, also is his tabernacle, and his dwelling place is in Zion. This is where he has chose to set up his place, his shrine, his tabernacle. This is the place where he is going to dwell, because he has always wanted to dwell with his people. So when you look at the Feast of Tabernacles, where we are about to celebrate, it's in recognition of what he wanted to Leviticus 23:33, and Yah spake unto Moshe, saying, speak unto the children of Yasharal, saying, the 15th day of this 7th month shall be a feast of tabernacles, 7 days unto Yah. So all of these feasts and everything he gave to Israel, because Israel is his portion. This is where he's going to dwell. This is what he is setting up. That's why everybody who gets born again has to come into Israel. You have to come into Israel, because everything was given unto Israel. This is where he's going to be. When he makes up his tabernacle, it's in Revelation 21. And Revelation is revealing. So it's already revealed. Maybe not to everybody, but the revelation is there. So when you're thinking of revelation, it's just revealing. I'm just going to reveal it to you. There's things in Revelation. You can't look at Revelation as chronicle. Did I say that right? Mm-hmm. Chronicle. Chronological. But you know where we get that from? From Greek, because their name of their God is what? Chronos. The name of their God is Chronos. So everything, when you talk about chronology and things that are chronology, you're talking about Cronus, which comes from the Greeks. That's not in Israel. Israel, when you're looking at Torah and you're looking at Israel, you're looking at something that is cyclical. Things that were spoken in the past are the future, and the future is the past. He says, I declared the end from the beginning. And those things that have not yet happened, I've already declared them. I just got to reveal them to you. So, Revelation, now here comes the revealing. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, out of the Shamaim, saying, behold, the tabernacle of Elohim is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and Elohim himself shall be with them and be their Elohim. This is what he's planned from the very beginning. When you go back to his dwelling place, or you know where we read in Psalms, where it says that Salem is going to be where he's going to be in Salem or Jerusalem. You know who came out of Salem? Melchizedek came out of Salem. I should have brought that out when I was dealing with Salem. Yeah, I should have brought that. You should have said something. Genesis 14:18. Melchizedek, that his name is we say Melchizedek, but what you're saying is King Zedek, Melchizedek, king or Melech of Salem, brought forth bread and wine. He was the priest of the Most High Elohim, because he chose Salem long time ago, what we call Jerusalem. He's already chosen that place because that's what he is setting up. And he said, I'm going to dwell in Zion. So this is where we're going back to the beginning, actually, where we are now to get the revelation, and we're trying to get to the end. Really, by the time we get to the end, we're going to be back at the beginning. We're going to be back at the beginning, because in order to be with him, you have to be eternal. And that's what he made Adam. He made Adam immortal. Adam was not supposed to die. So what we're doing is we're going back to the beginning. He set up a place in Edom in the mountain, and it was a shrine, and it was called Eden. And that's where he communed with Adam in the cool of the day. We're going back to the beginning. That's where we're going. After all this life and everything that we're living now, we have to go back to the beginning. And that's what this tabernacle is representing. It represents Most High Yah dwelling with us. Most High Yah dwelling with us. And that's what this celebration is all about, is that we want him to commune with us. We want him to tabernacle with us. Like it says in Revelations, or the revealing, I already revealed it to you. Behold, the tabernacle of Elohim is with men. So even the adoption, when we go through the adoption process and his spirit is in us, we're actually tabernacling with Elohim. He's trying to set up a place in us. Now, when he sets up a place in us where he dwells, it ain't going to be no fornication.
Hallelujah.
He ain't dwelling in fornication. I don't care if you call yourself Israel. That don't make no difference. He ain't dwelling in no fornication. He ain't dwelling in adultery. He don't dwell there. I'm Israel. I got a blood right. It don't matter.
Amen.
That don't matter. He's not going to dwell in lying. Habitual liar. I'm setting up a shrine, a dwelling place for him, but you can't stop lying? He ain't dwelling there. He's not dwelling there. He's not dwelling he had to clean out. A good example is when he told Moshe about building the ark for the covenant, and then the dwelling place for the ark of the covenant. And the tabernacle. They were supposed to build the tabernacle in the wilderness. And even building the tabernacle, you had the outside court, then you had the inner court. And what was in the inner court? The Ark of the Covenant. And everybody, you could not touch the Ark of the Covenant. He didn't even want you to touch it. He put rings around the sides of it, and you had to put a pole and a staff through it, and that's how they picked it up and carried it. You weren't even supposed to put your fleshly hands on it. Yeah, folks would die. We seen that one time when they was bringing it back from the Philistines, and it was Melech Daoud and one of his men. They seen the ark wobbling. One of his men went to hold it in place, killed him just like that, faster than lightning, took him out. And so you weren't even supposed to touch it because it was holy. And then the place that he put it into the Holy of Holies. And the only time Aaron, Aharon, or his sons could go into the Holies of Holies was once a year, but they could not go in there without having a sin offering first. The blood for the sin offering had to been given for him first. Then he had the blood for the people. So they had to... and then in the Holy of Holies, where he would come down and meet, it says he would come down and meet Aaron. But if Aaron was not right, what would happen to Aaron or the high priest? If he went into the Holies of Holies and he was not right, he died. They put veils around the hem of his garments. And while he was in the Holies of Holies, as long as they could hear those bells, but if they stopped and they didn't hear no bells, they couldn't go in there. They had to get a staff with a hook on it, grab him by his leg, and pull him out. Because the Holies of Holies was a shrine. This was a place where he came down to meet Aharon and accept that sacrifice. And so what we're doing is when we set up a tabernacle, we want Elohim to dwell with us, a tabernacle, it has to be holy. Somebody that's against holiness, you're not tabernacling with them. You're not tabernacling with them, yes.
So we're tabernacle in memorial, because if he tabernacled already with us, why do we have to do the things and all that?
Okay, because it's something that even though it's a memorial, he wants us to keep it.
So if we don't tabernacle, as far as literally put a tent up, but we atone with him, is that wrong? Because he is tabernacling with us.
So the feast that we're getting ready to acknowledge it is a memorial, and we do acknowledge that, and we really can't keep it the way he wants it done.
Didn't they put their booths on top of the houses?
Some of them, because they were all supposed to go where? So some people, the streets were filled, some of the fields and everything. I mean, once you get everybody there, well, since I can't really find them, I'm just going to go on my roof.
Okay, so if a person can't go together how we're doing it, is it okay they can do it in their, oh yeah, because you guys did it last year, your home.
Yeah, they went out and they did it. Actually, it's supposed to be for 8 days. It's supposed to be done for 8 days. They were supposed to live in their booths for 8 days. So how important is this? How important is this feast? He explains how important it is in Zechariah 14. Zechariah 14, And right now, Yasharal is scattered to the four corners. Israel scattered to the four corners. And there's a day coming where he's going to gather all of Israel and everybody in Israel. Because it says in Romans 11:27, it says, and all Israel shall be saved. So notice now, let me do this. I see your hand. I see your hand. Zechariah chapter 8, and I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna go there. I just want to bring this out because when he gathers Israel from the four corners, thus saith Yah of hosts, in those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take the hold out of all languages of the nations, even shall take a hold of the skirt of him that is a Yehudi, saying, we will go with you, for we have heard Elohim is with you. So in that day where he's gathering all his people, you're going to have those who are going to, just like when Israel came out of Egypt, they came out what kind of multitude? Mixed multitude. You had Egyptians, you had Ethiopians, you had all of those. There's Canaanites that came out with Israel or Yasharal because they knew Elohim's with these people. Most High Yah's with them. We're going with them. They weren't of the bloodline of Yaakov, of the 12 tribes, but we even see that in, I think it's Leviticus 24, we even see where it was a woman who had a son, and that son's father was what? An Egyptian. He wasn't an Israelite, he was an Egyptian. His father was an Egyptian, but his mother was an Israelite because they came out of mixed multitude. You see where Musha married a Ethiopian woman in the wilderness. An Ethiopian woman. She was not an Israelite. She was an Ethiopian woman, but she was with Israel. So the day is coming where when he gathers his people, there's going to be some people, it says here, out of languages of the nations, man, we're going to grab a hold of them. We're going with them. They're going to cling to them. These are not Israelites. It's people out of other nations, other languages of the nations. Saying we're going to take hold, it says here that 10 men shall take hold out of all languages of the nations. Not talking about Israel, but other nations. And they're going to grab a hold, yes.
I think, and don't, you can say I'm wrong if I'm wrong, I'm usually wrong, that because when we came over here, we were taught to always be against ourselves, the light against the dark, the field against the house. This, that, and the other, that Israel is so separate from each other that the reason why he's having these gatherings, don't forsake yourself assembling, is so we can learn how to get along with each other, so we can learn how to commune together and dwell together, because we're all going to be together in the end. So we can stop doing all this division and bickering and talking bad about the next one and this one. We're supposed to be together as one.
Right.
One.
He's always wanted his people to be together. He always wanted his people to be together. And that's the theme throughout this. But he wants us to be together because when he gathers his people, it even says that once he gathers them, he's getting rid of the rebels. He's getting rid of all the transgressors. He's going to get rid of them. And even Jesus even gave us, Yahusha gave us that example of the net, the dragnet, getting all of the fish. But when he brought it to shore, what did he do? He cast out the bad ones. So the way that we remain in Israel is we got to keep, like he says in Revelation, again revealing Revelation. The way we remain is to keep his commandments. That's what he said, which is a revelation. The only way we're going to have access into that city. I forget where that is, but it's in Revelation. The only way we get access to that city if we keep the commandments. Those are the ones who have access into that city. So, but yeah, he's always wanted people to come together. So in Zechariah 14, This is dealing with how important the Feast of Tabernacles is. So I want to go down. I don't want to read all of this for the sake of time, because it's already been 2.5 hours. But for the sake of time, but let's go down. You can read the whole chapter, but let's start with verse number 8. And it shall be in that day that living water shall go out from Jerusalem, half of them toward the former sea, and half of them toward the hinder sea. In summer and in winter it shall be. And he's talking about future events now. And Yah shall be king over all the earth. Yahuwah shall be king over all the earth. In that day shall there be one Yahuwah, and his name one. So even though we use English, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, but in that day, there's only going to be one. Everybody's going to call on one name. Some people say Yahweh. Some people say Yahweh Shai. Some people say Yahweh. Some people say Yahuwah. Some people say Yahusha. Some people say Yeshua. I mean, we got all these different names. But in that day, there's only going to be one. Only going to be one. Is that what it says here? Am I out of the book? Is it in the book? Okay, in that day there shall be one. Now some people don't even say Yahweh or Yahuwah. They just say Yod He Ud He or Yod He Wad He. Some people say Yahweh. Some people just say Yod He Ud He or Yod He Wad He, because they think it's sacred. I don't want to even pronounce it. I'll just say the letters Yod He Wad He or Yod He Ud He. Some people do that, but he says the day's coming where there's just going to be one, and his name one. And that's going to be good, because he's going to speak it, and then we just say it like he says it. Yeah. I mean, we're just going to say it how he says it, and we'll speak it then. Okay. There's another verse that goes along with this as a second witness, and I think it's Zephaniah as a second witness, where it says that he'll have one name and we'll all speak it with one consent. I think that's in Zephaniah, I think. His name is one, and we'll all speak it with one consent. Is that Zephaniah 2:9 or 3:9, somewhere around there? All the land shall be turned as plain from Gibeah to Rimnah, south of Jerusalem, and it shall be lifted up and inhabited in her place, and Benjamin's gate unto the place of the first gate. I'm going to go down here. Let's look at verse number 12. And this shall be the plague wherewith Yah will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. This is the plague. Remember now, this is the plague. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet. Their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. Now, where did you see that? I mean, I've seen this in a movie. Raiders of the Lost Ark. Didn't y'all remember that movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark? When they open up the Ark of the Covenant, and then all of a sudden, they were thinking about how beautiful it was as the Spirit came out and everything, and then all of a sudden their flesh just melted on them. And that's where they got it from, is right here. So that's the plague. And it shall come to pass in that day that a great tumult from Yahuwah shall be among them, and they shall lay hold everyone on the hand of his neighbor, and his hand shall rise up against the hand of his neighbor, and Yahudah shall fight at Jerusalem, and the wealth of all the heathen round about shall be gathered together, gold and silver and apparel in great abundance. And so shall be the plague of the horse, of the mule, of the camel, and all the ass, and of all the beasts that shall be in these tents, as this plague. This is the plague now. And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem. Now notice now, a lot of people come against Jerusalem. A lot of people still come against Jerusalem. You don't have to do that. I don't know why y'all keeping the Sabbath. You ain't got to keep the Sabbath. A lot of people come against Jerusalem. I don't know why y'all believe like that. I don't know why y'all keeping the feast. A lot of people come. He says, all nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to worship the king, the Melech, Yahuwah of hosts, and keep the feast of tabernacles. So people speak against it today, but there's coming a day you're going to keep it.
Don't they blaspheme the tabernacle? Revelation 13, they blaspheme his name and the beast
Yeah,
and the tabernacle.
yeah. They're actually blaspheming him now. You got people who blaspheme. They don't realize they're blaspheming. But what did he say blaspheme was? Speaking against his spirit. So his spirit sets all of this up. And then you talk against it? You got to be careful. We have to be careful. When something can be proven in Scripture, and you're going to speak against it. Now, Yahusha, Jesus said, you can speak against me, Ben Adam, son of man. You can speak against me. Don't speak against the Spirit. Because you speak against the Spirit, he don't have to forgive you. He said you won't be forgiven in this life, nor in the life to come. Now, I always was taught when I grew up that you have to have the Ruach to speak against the Ruach. But they was blaspheming him. He didn't give no Ruach. You had people blasphemed in his day. They didn't have no Ruach. They didn't have what we call the Holy Ghost or the Ruach Kodesh. You can blaspheme without the Ruach Kodesh.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, you can blaspheme him. You got some folks that's already blasphemed against his spirit. There ain't no hope for them. Well, I think all men can be saved. I don't. Because if you blaspheme against his, I don't think you can. If you don't know, say, hey, wait a minute, I just don't understand it yet. I want to mature in this thing. I don't want to speak against his Ruach. Can't do that. Yeah. I mean, there's times I said, hey, I don't have an understanding. I ain't going to speak against it. I just don't have an understanding. You know, let me have an understanding first. Because we can speak against the man, the flesh, the man, Yahusha Mashiach, the man Mashiach. We can speak against him. Don't speak against his spirit. Yeah, you can't. You can't speak against that. You can't speak against it. You speak against it now, and you be surprised. He don't have to cut your throat and kill you right there. He'll let you live. But in his sight, you dead. Because even James says, twice dead. No, Jude said that, or Judah, Yehuda, said twice dead, plucked up by the roots. Yeah. Yeah. You just, to speak against his Ruach is blasphemous. Can't do it. Well, I don't believe in the Son. Well, you might not believe in the Son. Maybe one day you'll believe in the Son. Well, I don't believe he was flesh. I don't believe that flesh was him. Well, you can do that. Because that's what Yahusha said. You can speak against me. You can't speak against the Ruach. Can't speak against the Ruach. So he says here, every nation now, let's read it again. And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem, those which are left or left behind. Because see, we've got the wrong, I want to come back here, okay? I'm going to come back here. If you guys got any questions out there in the chat, just bring them up. In Thessalonians, what is it? Thessalonians, is it 1 Thessalonians? 1 Thessalonians 4 and 16 or 17. Okay, 1 Thessalonians 4:17. It says, then we which are alive remain. So what is he now? In the English, you say it says remain, but look at it in the context in the Greek that it's written in, or what we have translated from. Remain is G4035. So you look up G4035, and it means to leave all around. That which has been left all around. Just kind of survived, they're just kind of scattered all over. That which has been left all around. They've turned it and says, you don't want to be left. But really what he's saying is, those who are left.
Is there another scripture? Blessed are those who are left?
Well, when he gave the parable of the tares and the wheat, who does he collect first to cast into the lake of fire? The tares. He snatches the tares away. And then even in Noah's day, he said they were all taken away. And so who was left in Noah's day? Only 8 souls. Only 8 souls was left. Everybody else was taken. In Luke chapter 17, when he's telling them, one will be at the mill working, one will be taken, the other one left. 2 people will be in bed, husband and wife in the bed. It ain't no 2 men in bed. Ain't no 2 women in bed. But 2 in bed, one will be taken, the other one left. And so the disciple says, where? They asked Yahusha, where? And he says, where the eagles are gathered together. He didn't just give him a direct answer. He told him, now you go study. Where them eagles are gathered together for that feast, they're going to feast on all of that flesh, everybody that he had snatched away. And in the parable of the tares and the wheats, he says, I'm taking all the tares. Because the servant says, should we get rid of the tares? He says, no, let them grow together. Let them grow. He says, the reapers or the angels are going to come. They're going to take the tares away first. Yes.
But it says we are going to be caught up in the air. We meet them.
Huh?
It says we are going to meet them in the air.
He's going to gather his people, okay? So, yeah, we're going to be caught up together with him in the clouds to meet Yahusha in the air, and so shall we ever be with Yahusha. So the key here is to find out where he's going to be. Because it says, so shall we ever be with him. So where is he going to be? Yeah, that's where he's going to gather them. Because, okay, I'm going to get to that. Where he's going to, should I go? Okay, let's do that first. Let's go to the gathering. Deuteronomy 30, and we'll look at verse 3 and 4. Deuteronomy 30, 3 and 4. That then Yah thy Elohim will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations whither Yah thy Elohim hath scattered thee. Listen to verse number 4. If any of thine be driven out unto the outmost parts of heaven, or the Shamaim, from thence will Yah thy Elohim gather thee, and from thence will he fetch thee. So he's going to gather them from one. Now the Shamaim is made up of stories. So if he's gathering them from everywhere around the Arats, and he's gathering them, they're going to be gathered in the Shamaim. But you have to understand that the Shamaim has stories in it. It's made up of stories. So we can look up here and we can see, what do we see when we look up here? Clouds. And those clouds are in the Shamayim. So he's going to gather his people, and that's what it's going to appear to be like, clouds in the Shamayim. And then it says we're going to forever be with him. So we have to find out where he's at. Now, before I go there, in Matthew 24 and verse number 31, the Mashiach says the same thing of Deuteronomy. He says, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet. That's why we should always keep the Feast of the Trumpet, because he's going to sound the trumpet, and it's going to be really loud. So the sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, because he says wherever you were scattered, that's where, from the four winds. Notice now what the Mashiach says. From one end of Shamayim to the other, just like the prophet Musha said in Deuteronomy. One thing I want to say about prophets is Musha was a prophet, Moses was a prophet. The last prophet was the Mashiach, Yahusha, Christ Jesus, Jesus Christ, Yahusha Mashiach. He was the last prophet. Shaul was not a prophet. I'll repeat that. Shaul was not a prophet. He tells you what he was. I speak to you Gentiles inasmuch as I am the apostle to the Gentiles. I magnify my office. So when you look at what Shaul is teaching in Thessalonians, you have to go to the prophecy or the prophets that spoke it. The prophets that spoke it was Musha, but Isaiah or Yahshua was a prophet too, and he spoke it. Along with Husha or Hosea, he was a prophet. Along with Joel, he was a prophet. Along with, Jeremiah, he was a prophet. So all of these prophets say the same thing that Musha said and Yahusha says. They all say the same thing. So if I go to Paul's writings now, his letters to the churches or the ecclesia, I have to understand he's not a prophet, but he merely speaks on what the prophets have said. So then I have to go back to the source or the prophets to see what they've said. And that's the last prophet to speak unto us. Yah, who at sundry times and divers manners spake in times past unto the fathers by what? The prophets, hath in these last days spoken unto us by his Ben. So the last one to speak on prophecy is his Ben. So wait a minute, what about Yahuchanan or John in Revelation? Isn't he a prophet? No, he's just revealing. It's just a revelation. I'm just giving you a revelation. I'm not speaking prophecy. I'm revealing unto you the book. So when you look at Revelation, you have to see the revealing of the book. So in Revelations 5, Revelations 5 and 9, so let me reveal it to you. Here's a revelation now. Not speaking prophecy, I'm just revealing. And they sang a new song, saying, Thou art worthy to take the book and to open the seals thereof, for thou wast slain and hast redeemed us to Elohim by thy blood out of every kindred and tongue and people and nation. And thou hast made and has made us unto our Elohim what? Kings and priests. Now remember, this is still one sentence. It's not two different sentences. We had to stay with the sentence 9 and 10. They like to break it up. And when I was taught this, I was only taught verse 9. I wasn't taught verse 10. I was taught verse 9. See, this is us. We were redeemed by the blood of the blood of the Lamb, and so he redeemed us unto him by the blood of the Lamb. And this is us. This is us singing this song. We're the only ones that can sing this song. Maybe you guys weren't trained like that or taught like that, but I was. We're the only ones that can sing this song. But finish singing the song. And has made us unto our Elohim kings and priests, and we shall reign on the earth, on the Arats. So those that have been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb get to reign as kings and priests on the earth. This is different from those who only reign for 1,000 years. Revelations 20 and 4, and I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them, and the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Yahusha, Jesus, and the word or the Torah of Elohim, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received mark upon their foreheads or in their hands, and they lived and reign with Mashiach forever. A millennium, just for 1,000 years, because they did not receive the mark, the name, or the number. They did not receive that, and they gave up their life because they didn't receive it, so they were able to reign with him for 1,000 years.
You said they gave up their life.
Yeah.
Their head?
That's what it says here.
So we are going to give up our head.
No, not everybody. Not everybody.
No, we don't follow along. It sounds like it's going to be two different people now. Wait a minute. Oh my God.
You have.
So us today, we're here on this earth.
Right.
Trumpet sound, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, okay, let's go. The mark, the beast, the revealed, self-produced, and we go through the 7 years of tribulation. And we may be the ones who gives up our head.
So you might have some who, for one thing, and this is how I see it, and I'm trying to get, by reading everything, and what I take into account what I'm getting ready to tell you, what I take into account is the gathering of his people, back into. Notice here, it says in Jeremiah 29. 29. Where's this at? Let's look. Let's see. Okay. Jeremiah 29 and 14. And I will be found of you, saith Yah, and I will turn away your captivity, and I will gather you from all the nations, from all the places whither I have driven you, saith Yah, and I will bring you again into the place whence I caused you to be carried away captive. This is a gathering of his people, okay? We also read in Zechariah 8 and I think it's 13 or 14, 8 and is it 23? 8 and 23, where 10 people from other nations and tongues are going to grab a hold of a Yehudi, say, we're going with you because we know that Yah is with you. Okay, you've got Ezekiel. I'll go to Ezekiel. Ezekiel, is it 20? Yeah. He says, verse 33, Ezekiel 20:33, as I live, saith the Adon Yahuwah, surely with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm and with fury poured out will I rule over you, and I will bring you out from the people and will gather you out of the countries wherein ye are scattered with a mighty hand and with a stretched out arm and with fury poured out. And I will bring you into the wilderness of the people, and there will I plead with you face to face, like as I pleaded with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt, so will I plead with you, saith the Adon Yahuwah. And I will cause you to pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant, because they got out of the covenant. And I will purge you. It's not what I wanted. I wanted to do this. And I will purge you, and I will purge out from among you the rebels and them that transgress against me. And I will bring them forth out of the country where they sojourn, and they shall not enter into the land of Yasharal, and ye shall know that I, Yahuwah. With all of those scriptures that I read, along with what Musha said about the gathering and what Yahusha said about the gathering and about those reigning in, kings and priests forever, all of that, taking all that into consideration, he's going to gather his people. He's going to deal with them face to face. He's going to bring them under the bond of the covenant. He's going to get rid of all the rebels and those that transgress against him. He's going to get rid of all that. But in all of this time where he's judging his people now, all of this time, you still got nations and the world still going on. So out there in the world, and who do you think is going to be ruling over the world after he gathers all of his people? No. So after he gathers all of his people, remember now he says, I'm going to take you back to where you were. Remember he says, a lot of people are going to be gathered unto me. They came out of mixed multitude. All of this, I'm going to deal with them face to face. While he's doing this, there's other nations out there in the world. You still got Gog, Magog, you got all those nations. So who do you think is going to be running all of those nations? Yeah, the Antichrist is going to be set up. The man of sin, he's going to have all those other nations while he's got his people dealing with his people. I'm dealing with my people. I'm putting my people back under the bond of the covenant. I'm dealing with my people. I'm getting rid of all the rebels. I'm getting rid of all the transgressors. All of this stuff is going on while he gathers his people in a secluded place that he's already reserved for them before they go into the land of Israel. Because remember, he says here, some of y'all ain't going over there. You're not going over there. And the reason why he hasn't done it yet is because he hasn't set up his kingdom to where he's going to reign on earth. Before he sets his kingdom up to where he's reigning on earth, he's going to deal with his people. He's getting rid of all the rebels, the transfer. He's going to deal with, while that's going on, you've got the man of sin, the Antichrist, that has all these other nations. So what do you think he's going to do? If you don't take my mark, if you don't do all that, you either do that or I'm taking your head off. So now let it be revealed, here comes a revelation. Here comes a revelation. So now now I'm going to set up my kingdom on earth. Before he sets up his kingdom on earth, the false prophet, the man of sin, all of that, even Satan, he's going to bound him down for 1,000 years. Everybody that has lost their head get to reign 1,000 years. But those that have been in the blood under the bond of the covenant, we get to reign as kings and priests for how long? Forever. That's how I see it from gathering all the scriptures together. I'm trying to prove it by that. The Shamaim was not made for flesh and blood. You can't go up there. People talk about, take me out of here, I want to go up there. You can't go. You're not made to go up there. You're not. If you understood, now he gives you a glimpse of the Shamaim when he brings down the city. And where does it come from? It comes from the Shamaim. But you know what you see first as it comes down? What do you see first of that city as it's coming down? Because he even tells you in Revelation. Huh? No, when you see that city descending out of the Shamaim, what do you see first coming down? The foundations of the city. He tells you about the foundations of the city, and the foundations are 12 stories made up of all these jewels. Why is it made? It's coming down out of the Shamaim, out of all these 12 stories, because that's what the Shamaim is made of.
All right, Bishop. Let me give it a So while Christ has taken us, or whomever, his people, and you said there's still a nation down here, this nation will still be here. So are we going to be amongst the Antichrist? the beheading and all that. History document.
If you're gathered with his, he's going to gather his people
He's gonna gather
from the four corners. He's
He's
going
gonna
to,
be totally away from the Antichrist.
everybody's not going to come out. I want to come back to Jeremiah chapter 50. He's trying to tell you about the judgment that's going to come on Babylon. And he wants everybody to get out. But do you think everybody's going to get out?
No.
Everybody's not coming.
Is that what you were saying? Like when he says it's time to go, you have to be ready to go no matter where you're at, what you're doing. Who in your family decides to go? If they're at work and they say, "Sorry, I'm not listening." You got
He said, just think of the parable of the 10 virgins. The sound came. Okay, you better. It's time to what? Go wake up, and then what do? You have to go meet him. You got to go meet him. But you had 5 who were wise and 5 who were foolish. So you have some that are going to go out and meet him, and you're going to have some that's not going to go out and meet him. They're going to remain. They're going to remain here. In Jeremiah chapter 50 here, he deals with the judgment that's coming on Babylon. And he wants his people to come out of Babylon. But do you think they're going to come out of Babylon? You have to read this whole thing. In those days and in that time, saith you, the iniquity of Yasharal shall be sought for, and there shall be none, and the sins of Yehuda, and they shall not be found, for I will pardon them whom I reserve. Those that he reserves. Now, it tells us in, here again, Revelation, giving you Revelation, it tells us the ones that he reserves in 5 and 9. We read that. Okay. He talks about Babylon. He says, how is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How has Babylon become a desolation among the nations? There's another, I think maybe it's 51. 51 and 6. So you have to read Jeremiah 50 and 51. Flee out of the midst of Babylon and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity. For this is the time of Yah's vengeance, and he will render unto her a recompense. So there is coming judgment on, but he tells them, hey, it's time to get out. It's time to go. You're going to know when he gathers his people. It ain't going to be no secret. It's going to be time to get up and go. Hey, y'all, it's time to get up and go. We got to go out and meet the bridegroom. It's time to go with them. And you're going to have people who are going to say, man, we know Elohim is with y'all. I'm going with y'all. We know he's with y'all. I'm going with y'all. He's going to gather his people from the 4 corners, everywhere. Isn't that what Christ said, the Mashiach said? I'm gathering from everywhere. And then he brings them into that place. Now I'm going to deal with you, because you're going to have a lot of people. The parable of the dragnet. I'm casting my net out there. I'm gathering all. Come on, y'all, come and go with me. Let's go. And then when he gets them, some people can't come under the rod of the covenant. Some people have transgressed against him. Some people are just simple rebels. He says you can't go in. If you're not gathered with his people, who do you think you're going to be under? Yeah. So he's dealing with his people. I'm giving all my people, I'm gathering. Now I'm going to deal with them. Just because he gathers you, remember now, he's still going to deal with you. You got to come to that rod. And that's why Shaul said in Corinthians, 2 Corinthians 5 and 10, is that it? No, 2 Corinthians 5 and 10. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of the Mashiach, because he's still going to deal. He's still going to deal. That everyone may receive the things done in his body according to he hath done, whether good or bad. Everybody, all of us. So if somebody, that's why it's good to practice holiness and godliness and righteousness, because you're going to be dealt with. People who think, some people think once saved, always saved. You better stay there, because this is the one people like to talk about, eternal salvation. Here it is, Hebrews 5:9, and being made perfect, he became the author of eternal salvation unto all them that obey him. So if you think you can get away with stuff, then go on with your bad self. But you're going to be dealt with. You will be dealt with.
But don't you got to make sure and be careful who you're following, because in Matthew 24 it talks about when it says he's there, he's whatever, don't go. So you're gonna, a lot of people who are going to be deceived just through that, because who they're following is deceived, and the leader may not even know they're deceived.
Yeah, well,
I mean, a lot of people are going to perish because of that, just not knowing.
Isaiah 9:16, for the leaders of this people cause them to what? Err. And they that are led of them are destroyed. So, but see, if you have the Ruach, and that's why you got to have a fervent prayer life, because if you have the Ruach, you're seeking them in prayer. You got to have, but he gives us the spirit of his son to cry out to him. My prayer is, I don't want to be deceived. I don't want to be deceived. I can't miss this. I can't miss it. I want my ears keen till I can hear him. And when it's time to go, it's time to go. And then when I am gathered with him, got to stand before him. Like Shaul said in Corinthians, all of us got to appear before the judgment seat of Christ. The devil, that old Satan, he's got people thinking that they're going to say, holla down here and luya up in the Shamaim. Just like that. That's because the way Shaul now, who's not a prophet, but the way he interprets the prophecy that came from Musha and Jeremiah and Isaiah, that we read those scriptures, right? And Zechariah, and we read those scriptures, and the way Shaul quotes them, we're thinking of holla down here, luya up in the Shamaim. But you have to take the Bible in its totality, all of it. You got to take the Bible in its total totality. Total totality. He's speaking in tongues. No. Total totality. Totality. You have to look at it in its totality. Yeah. Totality. I come in thank you. Let me get that scripture. You got to take the whole volume of the book. You can't. He says, then said I, lo, I come in the volume of the book. It is written of me to do thy will, O Elohim, O Yah. The whole book. Yeah, they didn't give us all of it, but we got enough. I can't. I think I agree with, there is more. There's more, but I got enough. I got enough right here. I can't handle all this. I'm trying to handle this. So, there is more, though. There is more. They said that when they got the Dead Sea Scrolls, they didn't publish all of them. So what did they not publish? there might be things that they have not published that kind of goes along and explains some things that we still got questions on. Yeah, I mean, they did show us the apocryphy. The Apocrypha, yeah. 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 So, I mean, we do have, there, you know, even in the King James, when they wrote that first edition of the King James, it had all the Apocrypha in it. I got that book at home. Yeah. I got the first edition of the King James. And the English in it is kind of, I mean, it's kind of like the older type of English, you know. Well, there was a couple of other attempts to translate the Latin Vulgate into English. Wycliffe did it, and Tyndale. It's Tyndale. They did it before King James. Those two did it before King James, but everything that they wrote, they burned up. The Catholic Church burned up, and they killed them. Wycliffe and Tyndale lost their life because it was not sanctioned by the Catholic Church. But they did sanction King James to do it. And even in the first edition, you know, his name is I-E-S-U-S and it's pronounced Jesus. In the first edition, it's pronounced Jesus. And what you see for U's, they have V's. So his name was like I-E-S-V-S, but they didn't pronounce it as a V because V didn't come till later. It was pronounced Jesus. Yeah, because those V's are actually U sounds. Yeah, that's Old English. Yeah. No, those V's are like how we pronounce our U's today. Yeah. Because like when they spelled house, they spelled it H-O-V-S-E-E. You know, S-E. You know, house H-O-V, but it's actually H-O. We say house H-O-U. Yeah, but that's just Latin. You know, the U is a V. That's Latin. So you have to read through it. But the Apocrypha was there. It wasn't until like the third or fourth edition where they cut it out. You know, but the first couple editions of the King James 1611 had the Apocrypha in it. But we have enough. We have enough to study. At least I do. I don't know if so. All right, we're going to break this off. I wanted to go to that council that he had, but Tabernacle is a time that we're supposed to commune with him because he chose Yaakov, and he says, I'm going to dwell with them. And so that's what we're celebrating, the fact that we've been chosen. He chose us. I didn't go through all of the Zechariah 14, but it says those who refuse to go up to tabernacles, you know what happens to them? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And we can't do it the way he made it for us to do because, for one, you have to go to Jerusalem. So, yeah. And I mean, when they did it, do you know the first 40 celebrations of Passover and Feast of Unleavened Bread and Tabernacles, the first 40 of them, you know where they celebrated them at? In the wilderness. They weren't even in Jerusalem. They were in the wilderness. So it started off in the wilderness, but it was pointing to Jerusalem. So what we do now is we're pointing back to Jerusalem.
That's the reason why you can't use that as an excuse. You can't use that excuse. You have to be in Jerusalem because the first ones
they weren't celebrated. Mm-hmm. You know, even, well, I'm not going to keep Passover because you have to go to Jerusalem. Well, they instituted it. He told them in the wilderness, you keep my Passover.
But I think it's good that now, even though we haven't observed in the past, that our eyes are open, because when that time comes and he gathers his people and it's time to go, we might have to learn how to, dwell out in the wilderness. So it's good that we get some kind of practice now.
Right.
So no, so it's not like a total shock, like, oh my goodness. So we won't end up like the children of Israel. You brought us out here to die, because that's probably what some people will be saying.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be like, you brought us out here to die. We were in America. We were here. We were there. We were comfortable. Took us from our jobs. We have no money. We don't have this. We don't have that. So it's good that we're practicing now, so we have a little taste of what we might experience.
Yeah.
But you got all the convenience.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
You got all the convenience, you got everything, electricity.
I want to jump to the little bit.
It's gonna be comfortable.
But we're gonna see our Messiah.
Run and get the water.
We're gonna see him. We're gonna be with him. So, I mean, I feel like if I see his face and I can be with him, I think I could be. If he can survive, I can survive, because it says we're gonna be like him. So I think I can make it. You know, if he. But you're gonna have, even when he gathers his people, you're gonna have a lot of people, like it says in Ezekiel, they're just not gonna make it. They're not gonna make it. Because when it says we're gonna reign forever, that means his kingdom's gonna be set up. But he's not setting up his kingdom until he deals with all his people. They have to pass through the rod and the bond of the covenant, because he even says they're not going into Yasharal. So at the first gathering of his people, the first gathering of his people is not to go into the land. You still got to go, and we have to stand before the judgment seat of the Mashiach. That's what he's going to be dealing with. When Shaul said it, you're going to be judged on the judgment seat of under judgment, or you have to face the judgment seat of Mashiach. That's what he said. Yeah. And you have to give an account for what you did. Got to give an account. Because see, everybody who says they've been born of the water and the spirit and brought under the blood, well, your life should have proved it then. Your life should prove that you've been brought under the blood. That's why you got to give an account for it. Because folks are going to have that testimony. I've been born again of the blood of the Lamb. Okay, now you got to prove it. You got to prove it now. How was your life? You got to give an account for the things that you said. Yahusha said every idle word is going to be brought back into what? Judgment, and that's when we're going to appear before his judgment. We're going to see him. We have to give an account for everything we've said and everything we've done. Now, if you blaspheme the Ruach, well, your judgment's sealed. Yes.
So everything that we said during atonement, we ask for repentance and forgiveness. Is that all wiped away? If somebody said something wrong to their brother or sister or thought something, is that during atonement when we go to him, we afflict our souls, we ask for forgiveness?
You ask for forgiveness for him, but if I offended my brother, do I go to the Mashiach or do I go to my brother?
Well, yeah, if you did all that.
Yeah.
Is that idol? Okay.
Then yeah, because you should be. Now, I can go to my brother and say, hey, look, I did this, I offended you, I transgressed you, please forgive me. Now, he might say, yeah, I forgive you, my brother, I love you. He might say, no, I ain't gonna forgive you. It's still off you.
Right.
It's off you, And then now they got to carry that burden.
Right.
You're free from it.
Right.
He's set up a process for us to get right, so that when we give an account for ourselves, we can say, this is, my witness. I got all these witnesses. This is what I did. I got, but anybody that says they're under the blood of the covenant, and you still living your life doing everything you want to do and everything like that, you speaking against that blood. You got to be careful now. I can't be brought under the blood and then keep my own lifestyle that I want to live and blatantly go against commandments. Now, Christ said, I've come to fulfill the commandments. So let me explain them to you, what I meant when I said, thou shalt not commit adultery. So then he goes through that process because he's saying, I'm the fulfillment of that. Musha just gave you, thou shalt not commit adultery. But what you did, you went and killed your wife so you could marry another woman. Let me tell you what he meant by thou shalt not commit adultery. So he goes on to explain it. You know, all these people who think the law is done away with, no. When he said, I come to fulfill it, he's coming to explain what it meant. But he also said, you know, you can't be so dogmatic in law that you leave out the weightier things. Which is what? The weightier things that the law teaches. He says, you have omitted the weightier matters of the law, which is judgment, mercy, faith. Because somebody who has no mercy don't get no mercy at the time of judgment. Because you got some folks that's so dogmatic with law and commandments and they have no mercy. Just like the woman that was caught in adultery and the man should have been brought there too. And he said, and they said, the law says she's to face death because there are some sins unto death and there's sins not unto death. But the law says she should die. What says you? And he says, you without sin cast the first stone. And then he says unto her, where's all your accusers? And you know what he said? Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. That's the mercy of the law. Yeah, he brought it because what the law should teach us is mercy. It should teach us faith. Faith didn't come until Christ. No, faith was there way before Christ came on the scene. You have some people say law don't teach faith. Well, then you don't know the law. Because the law teaches faith. Because the law tells you about Abraham. Mm-hmm.
Would it be right to say that the law, keeping the law is our showing of our faith?
Mm-hmm. And keeping it.
Yeah.
But don't be a judge of it, especially if you got sin. That's what Christ was saying. You without sin, since you want to bring judgment on this woman because she did sin, but those who are without sin, y'all condemn her.
Make sure you're spotless.
They couldn't. They had to walk away. I can't. At least they were honest. They didn't have, yeah, they didn't render judgment. They were honest. Man, I got some sin on me. I can't, how am I going to judge her? I got sin. And they walked away, And then he gives the example of the beam. You got a beam in your eye and you trying to get the mote out of your brother's eye? You can't see. How you gonna help somebody see and you can't see? It don't work that way. Get that beam out first, And you have a lot of people sitting in the seat of judgment that's got sin on them. They got to answer for that. They're gonna have to answer for that. Make sure I'm ready to forgive because I want to be forgiven. That day comes, I want to be forgiven. I don't want, when he sees me, I want him to see his blood. I don't want him to see a transgressor. I want him to see his blood.
So you should pray for people that's in sin instead of talking against them.
Yeah, talking against them and condemning them and talking about, you got so many folks crying out, you going to hell, and all they do is break the law. It's like, man, the cry should be get right.
Yeah.
That should be the cry. Just get right. Leave that stuff alone. Come out of that. wrongdoing, all that sinfulness. You know he hates somebody who sows discord. He hates that. Come out of that. Come out of that. Instead, you got folks, you going to hell. Now you got some folks, homosexuals. We getting late. I know, folks. You got to go, man. Okay. All right. We're gonna finish this up because I can keep going on, but we'll go ahead and close this out. We say Shabbat Shalom to all those who joined us in. Salute all the kings and the queens, the Hebrews, Shebrews, lions and lioness. We salute all of our beloved, all of our brothers and sisters in the Mashiach. We salute all of you, and we say Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for attending this class and for being with us. And we're still talking about the communion, the tabernacling with the Most High. And Emmanuel, his name shall be called Emmanuel, which means Elohim with us. Hallelujah.